It sounds better, actually.
Okay. This is
You're still a little low, but it's okay. I'll hold my phone up to my
okay. We're
ear.
live now. This
Okay.
is Illuminati News number 81. Special guest Jin the Ninja. We're gonna talk about the Illuminati and the Olympics, and I mean, to know what the Cooper says that the farther you dig back in the past, the further you'll be able to understand the future.
Clint, your mic's really low. I can barely hear you.
Let me grab my other microphone. Maybe that'll be better.
Okay, no problem. Sorry, guys, who's ever watching live. I'll entertain you for a few minutes. So, Clint has generously invited me on to discuss French Illuminism because he is the expert, as we all acknowledge. And also, he got a shout out in my latest episode with Dan from End of Days Radio. So, you can anyone can check that out and hear me extol Clint's numerous virtues on the scholarship of Bill Cooper and Freemasonry. And what else? I don't know. Clint and I have become actually like good homies, and it did not start out that way, but honestly, it has been a blessing to know him and be on the show with him. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate any live audience if there is anyone listening. I'm sure there is. But
This is my second YouTube, so there might not be. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. It's still kind of low, but it's okay.
Okay. God damn it. Oh, it's so hot. My cappuccino is kicking in. Let me go to mic settings again. I could turn it up a little bit.
Okay, it looks like I am solo while Clint fixes his mic situation. What do I want to say? I don't really have anything interesting to say. I don't really live stream very often. I do it with End of Days, as does Clint, and so hopefully Clint comes back because I'm not a good live streamer.
I had to go to the other mic back to the
Okay, no
PC.
problem. I'll just have no music playing in the background, so I'll have to just really listen carefully.
Let me make sure my mic is turned up all the way. Jesus, that cappuccino, that extra shot really hit me.
That's good though, right?
Yeah. Damn it, it keeps turning the automatic adjust mic volume on. Here, I'm gonna turn my mic up 200. Should be
Okay, try that.
better. I would assume. Does it sound a little bit better? Or?
It's a little better. It's a little better.
Yeah.
It's been
I gotta talk
improving.
loud.
You'll have to speak really loud, yeah, but that's okay.
Hello.
I'm not an old man.
I need a nurse. Oh,
I may smoke too. I don't know. Well, we'll see. So I don't know where my pipe is. It's somewhere around here.
you got a glass bowl?
No, I have one of those stainless ones that is magnetic, so it like is easy to clean and it can never break because I've had a little. Well, I live on a farm, right, Clint? So it's like
Oh,
I
nice.
I have like all this heavy machinery. I've dropped numerous glass pipes, and
What kind
it
of
doesn't really work for me to have glass outside. So I have this like little magnetic one. It has like a cool case. It just looks like a cigarette case. Nobody can even tell what it is, and it's
Yeah.
like flat. So if it drops, it just comes apart in three pieces and then it magnetizes all back together. So yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
saw
kind of,
my friend's got
you
one in
know.
his shop. Oh,
But I also roll my own. But yeah, I can't really do that if I have to function. It's like a little too. I'm not as much of a pro as you.
oh yeah, I've been smoking since '98.
98.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how old that is for me. Because we're not that far in age. Like you're a little older than me. You're like 5 years older than me, but not. It's not a huge.
Oh yeah, I started
We're in the
smoking when I was.
same millennial, aging millennial cohort.
Yeah.
But I guess I was like a shorty back then. 98. Okay, I was like 11. Wow, that's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I was 15.
You were
15.
like one of those bad kids, weren't you?
I wasn't really. I guess I was.
I'm just teasing you, fun. I was kind of a bad kid, so it's okay.
I got in trouble that year for making a prank phone call, which affected me for like 4 years because of the court system.
Oh my god, that's horrible. Well, who did you make the
Yeah,
prank call to?
it was a prank 911 call. I was trying to get my stepdad to get me a
Oh,
PlayStation 1.
I see, I see, I see, I see. I got you, I got you.
Yeah, it was really dumb. But then I found out how the courts operate, and they double jeopardied me. They tried me as a child, and then I violated the probation, and they tried me as an adult, and they hit me with everything they could. And it's funny because even back then I knew about the double jeopardy clause, and I was like, "This is double jeopardy. I don't want to enter into this plea." And they were like, "You have to," and it's like I didn't even know that was illegal for them to say that I had to. I mean, technically, I could go back if I could. Legally, there's no statute of limitations in America to press charges against deprivation of rights. So, I mean, technically, I could press charges against the courts for up to this day. I could find somebody that would actually press the charges.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? It's like you always say, like, we need our elected or whatever, elected or non elected, we need people to do their job and like
Yeah.
enforce the Constitution.
I was working on this paint last night. Not that great, but
Oh, that looks awesome. I love it. It's a wolf, right?
yeah, I'm doing some painting for my friend.
And for people wondering, I could see it's a wolf, but Clint's room is rather dark, as it always is. So,
Oh yeah, I guess I got a light right here. Well,
no,
I
you
gotta
don't
stick
have
to the
to.
vampire theme. Let me check this out.
Oh, your mic sounds so much better now. Oh, that's awesome. Is that a bookend?
Yeah, I got two of them.
Oh, awesome. I love it.
My mom gave them to me to paint, but I ended up just keeping them. And
You should actually. All the ones in Indonesia are very colorful. Like the original ones, they would all been painted with polychrome, green and yellow, and so you can paint them. No big deal. I mean, if you want to, if you like them how they are, just keep them how they are. Oh shit, Clint froze. No. Clint, you froze. Okay, so it looks like I am solo again. So I am not a complete retard. I actually have my own show, but this is Clint's stream. So what I'm a neophyte in this material. I'm usually when I so on end of days I usually discuss tantra or magic or sorcery or chaos magic or whoever Dan has on, and then Clinton usually tells me, okay, well, what do you think of this? And then I try and give him my tantric interpretation, and he then corrects me and says, well, no, the Luminous are really doing this thing. So but it's a good discourse, because I think through discourse we refine the truth in a way. We Because truth is really a light, and so when you don't fully understand the truth, when you're ignorant, you can get lost very easily in the deception, right? Because light can also be a deception, especially visible light. So I think there's something interesting with that. And then also, but I think discourse refines it. I think it brings this kind of tension that you need to sort of become the arrow of truth, or at least to sort of point you in the right direction. And this is also like a Masonic concept. I'm not a Mason or affiliated with any secret society in any capacity, but I do think there is something interesting about humble masonry and how they sort of regular people, regular men, like countrymen or whatever, like shipbuilders or people like stonemasons, but just like normie ones, like people who make like headstones for cemeteries or lay bricks, whatever. There is like a humble masonry that allows like the everyman to sort of learn different techniques for theurgy, for perfecting himself. So I find that very interesting because, I mean, it's very much, it seems transgressive in that if you're raised, hey, Clint.
Okay, I manually plugged in with a wire, so it's not on the Wi-Fi, so it shouldn't go
Oh, it
crash
sounds
again.
fucking so much better. Your mic, by the way, it's like night and day.
Oh wow, that's. I think the Netgear adapter thing was for some reason. If you get too many USBs plugged in, it fucks it up. Okay, well that's good.
So I was trying to fill the space with like a monologue. I don't know how I fucking did, but anyways, so you'll have that when you go back and listen to it.
Oh yeah, but it's ironic. Something on this old computer, I was looking at what is that called? The bookmarks, and I do have the Wikipedia of Wukong on there in the bookmarks because I was looking at old magic cards I was saving to buy, which are now too expensive to buy.
So is there still a big market for those things?
Well, when Mattel bought them, they really messed with the prices. Certain older cards have a no reprint policy, but then they got around it with like this thing where they do like theme type stuff like Lord of the Rings, and then they'll reprint the card with a different name, and then in the subtitles have the old name, and so they're really screwing everybody basically.
Right, because they can't. It's never about individuals making money. It's always about the corporate. sort of corporatocracy is the only one who can have profit, right?
Yeah, then the all the card shops always promote the commander format, which all the old school players don't really care for because it's lame. And like cuz it's like we're used to like first to third turn wins type of thing for really competitive stuff. And the commander format makes it so it's like a 30 turn game.
That's really weird. I don't know anything about magic. My parents never. It wasn't like it was they were evangelicals or anything. They never were like, you can't play that. They just were like, you have to concentrate at school, and you already have a lot of activities. So this is not something we want you to get into. Plus, I was always like weird, and fitting in was hard, and I don't think playing magic cards at the comic book store, even though I was a regular at the comic book store, I don't necessarily think it would have helped me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a fun game. This is a
No,
good
I was
card.
totally into it. I secretly really wanted to do it.
Oath of Druids. It's all really just chess.
It seems
There's
very Spurgy.
there's a classic card, the Oath of Druids.
Awesome.
Um, it's just like combos where you're like for the channel combo. Oh, excuse me.
That's okay.
It's like the one of the first combos that was ever invented for Magic was the lava or fireball and the channel fireball. And what you would do is you would basically the first turn you would play a Mox or a Lotus, and then you would sacrifice it for mana, and then you would play the channel, which allows you to exchange life for mana, and then you would exchange 19 life for 19 mana, and then use the extra couple mana to cast the fireball for 20 damage on the opponent, and then basically that was the first turn win.
So
So
it's like
like
min maxing.
yeah, it's like balancing out. It'd be like if it was a real life thing and you could do magic somehow, it would be like you're draining yourself, your own body of its life force to like 1%, and then you're using
Okay.
that to defeat the enemy.
That's probably actually more how mana works in
Yeah,
reality. It is there is something of life force in magic. So in magic, not Magic the Gathering, but
yeah,
in practicing magic, there is something that you can. There is a way to rectify your life force, but I think that people don't know very often how to do that. So yeah, I
yeah.
saw. That's why I always say don't do it. Like don't do too much
Well, it's
magic.
like the movie
And
stars and the Hollywoods, all the big singers and stuff. I think that if the spirit, well, I guess regardless of if they're practicing real witchcraft or not, but they're they're receiving energy or mana from their fans who are all screaming in the audience.
100%. 100%. This is exactly right. Like, this is the thing, Clint, is that this is a conclusion that I've been coming to. And I have a friend named Zach who he came on my show to discuss Tracy Twyman. Anyways, he and I have these like long DMs about this subject. Like, what is stagecraft? And in my opinion, stagecraft is witchcraft. It just isn't it's just not witchcraft like how they teach you in a book. It's all about stage. It's all about like the performance, but that is the ritual, the
Oh
outer
yeah,
ritual, but still the ritual. So in my opinion, it doesn't matter even if they don't even understand what they're doing. There
yeah.
is something in it.
Well, it's like what Todd was saying when he came on last time. He was quoting Robert Anton Wilson, who is a Satanist, by the way, but Robert Anton Wilson was talking about sex magic and the how that they were basically meditating for chi during the sex stuff, and that there's porn stars these days that are they're receiving all this basically Jo energy.
Yeah, totally. No, 100% gooning energy. Yes, it's real.
Yeah, and it's giving them some sort of more chi than the regular person basically.
And like it's like what the high priest does. The high priest has the audience and they're receiving all this uh energy from them basically through the audience enjoying the, venerating the high priest basically. And in a way it does like give them psychic power, which is
100%. This is the thing, especially with porn stars. They are like more of a vessel because porn stars don't really have long careers in general, right? But they are vessels for that energy for a certain time. So you could say it's somewhat like a Babylon queen in like the more Levian kind of Satanism or Temple of Set Satanism. It that is more the idea is that they get elected for a few years. Like it's like how they in the 60s and the 70s they had different girls like movie stars come and go, right? Like they had different ones that were sort of the queen of the coven for a moment, and then they would mysteriously die or fade away. And I think that that is how the porn industry often works. Is that these people serve as vessels because I think the excess actually goes to, well, if you think of like a film, any film as kind of like a magical ritual, it's a syntax, it's a grammar of magic mediated by electricity and images.
yeah.
The vessel cannot contain all the energy that it receives, right? Like a person, unless they have a high capacity. Now, if someone has a high capacity, they can take in a lot of energy. If they have like a mediocre capacity, like a porn star would have a mediocre capacity because they're having sex with hundreds of people. The people don't have necessarily the best energy, so their energy never really expands, and they're always trapped in like that bliss pleasure.
Yeah.
But it spills over into maybe, remember when Vivid was really big? Like Vivid was like almost mainstream. Like people knew what Vivid Entertainment was, and there was like all these kind of B-list celebrities associated with it, and like Jenna Jameson and all that stuff.
Mm.
So I think it spills over into sort of the people who are behind the scenes. That's my personal theory.
Oh yeah. Well, it's on par with the the New Testament stories about the Babylonians and the, Sodom and Gomorrah and the Kadesh and the Kadesha, the male and female, um what do they call the male and female the holy prostitutes, and that it's rebirthing itself in modern times through these, porn stars basically. The
100%. And celebrities can be porn stars. I'm not saying that they are porn stars, but there is a sexual. Okay, so like with Lana Del Rey, there's clearly something very sexual about her when she's on stage. Like, I don't like her music at all. I barely know even one of her songs, but I just think she embodies that kind of like voluptuous sexual energy.
oh
And
yeah,
and a lot of people right now are talking about Charlie X, is her name XEX, whatever her fucking name is, that girl from the UK who makes shit music. I don't even like it, but she is kind of that energy too. It's kind of porny. It's kind of
yeah,
sleazy, and so they have that energy. They collect, their energy collectors, and definitely Taylor Swift has that. Even though I think she's
yeah. She's got no
very not
booty.
hot. Yeah, no, she's
What?
like not. I don't know. Something about her is very not sexual.
Well, I think she could be. She might be. She might have started off as a dude.
Oh, you think that she's like one of those,
Some
like
people.
Amber?
Yeah. Some people think that it's Anton LaVey's grandson.
She does have kind of a dude energy. I'm not gonna lie, and like even her face, like she because she's so thin, she pulls off like being feminine.
Yeah.
But
The Ice
sorry, can you go
Spice
ahead?
is definitely one of these sexual
Oh,
musical.
yeah, totally. She's definitely like even her red hair, 100%. Like not even a question about it.
Yeah. Yeah. They
I mean, it's
use.
so obvious.
Oh yeah. Well, the Illuminati they planned on using women. There was two grades of female Illuminati. One was the intellectual, and the other was the temple prostitute, basically. And the temple prostitute was used to extort information. just like the CIA LSD test or whatever.
Yeah, this is really interesting actually because I've just been thinking and I've been talking to Zach about this about how spycraft is occultism. Like literally is
Oh yeah,
occultism because you can't see it happening. And
yeah,
so and in China there's actually a goddess of the dark moon. So like the moon, part of the moon that we cannot see. She is one of the goddesses of sexual alchemy, magic, sorcery, particularly, and sexual alchemy, as well as spycraft. So they're definitely. I totally understand with what you're saying. Like there's the Virgin, sort of like the Athena, and then there is like the Venus, who is like the whore, quote unquote.
yeah, yeah. And someone who knows says Ice Spice has Down syndrome too.
I think she's just Dominican. But no, she's definitely an invert. Like she's like with the butt stuff and all of that is very anal and that's on purpose. It's totally intentional. It's
Yeah,
all
well, it's
about
sad.
right.
It's sad how uneducated they all are.
I don't even know if they are. I think they're uneducated in some ways, like worldly ways, but then in these in like whatever they're doing, because she clearly knows. Like she's like a Babylon daughter, whatever, like archetype. Like even her birth date is magic number. If you look at Ice
Huh?
Spice,
What's their birthday?
I can't even remember. It is something like weirdly. It she has a magic numerology. I looked it up once. I can look it up again. I'll just give me a sec. Keep talking.
Oh yeah, I'm posting a video on Twitter, so we get a couple more views.
Oh,
I'll
I'll
see if I.
retweet it, of course.
Oh yeah.
So she was born on January 1st. So
Ooh.
January 1st, 1 two
Yeah,
thousand. So 13. 3 plus
that's
1.
interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Um, so what is that? Aquarius, I think.
Yeah, it's Aquarius. So she is like the perfect Babylon, not the perfect, because there's obviously like different ones, right? Like I said, there's different ones, and it can depend on your age, I think. Because you have Tuesday Wells, whose career never really took off, but she was super famous in her cohort in the 70s. But they she was definitely a Babylon queen, and then they retired her. So, and I think that Mariska Hargitay's mom was also like at least for a quick minute, aside from being like an MK Ultra bunny or whatever. I forgot what Jay calls them, but the sex bunny or whatever. So she was that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, I posted it and tagged you on there. So
Okay, I'll retweet it right
um,
now.
I'm over here. Somebody's saying we can't possibly figure out if somebody's Knights of Malta or, and I'm like Freedom of Information Act. I just don't want to be the one that files it because I don't want a file put on me.
I mean, this is the thing. People who are in the Knights of Malta, it's pretty easy to trace because they always have they're always affiliated with some subgroup like the Knights of St. George or the Order of St.
Yeah,
George or they're always it's always something that's very obvious.
yeah,
Order of the Dragon. It's always something.
yeah. Those are all. I would consider those all basically like outer core groups of the Illuminists. Um,
Okay, so explain to me how it works just in a core structure. Like pretend I've watched a couple of your William Cooper awesome videos. Everybody
yeah,
should watch that, but and go back and check it out. And I still need to catch up like so many hours. But just
yeah.
explain to me like I'm just a total neophyte. Like I
Well, it's
don't
like
understand at
there's.
all.
I would say in my opinion, there's three grades. The first outer core grade is the tools of the Illuminati, who are people who aren't members, who have been indoctrinated and initiated through television, music, culture. They've been taught certain things which gives them a certain type of gnosis in which they are doing the quote great work of the Illuminati, which is keep in mind that that great work is total opposite to the ancient archaeological Masonic great work,
Right.
and that because the ancient Masonic great work was to take all the ancient religions and then find the roots and then turn them back into one religion, into what it was. But the Illuminati great work is to convince man that they're gods, to convince man that they're all one, and to enslave the masses. And that the you want to turn that down like a tiny bit? And the second tier would be the outer core that is initiated, where typically they are a member of a religion or a secret society. They have been initiated. That they don't understand the secret great work that you know they're not akin to what the actual plan is, and they are used by their religions or excuse me, and they're conditioned and taught, and that their religious doctrine is twisted, so then they think they're doing some kind of greater good for their religion. And like Adam Weishaupt specifically, one of his examples was the Protestant movement, how he was perverting the religion. That's why I'm always all the Christians hate me, because I'll bring up the 3 days 3 nights thing with Jesus, and how the Bible says he died on Nissan Wednesday or whatever, and that was risen on a Friday night, and then that's 3 days 3 nights, Wednesday to Friday. But the modern interpretation, they're saying Friday night to Sunday morning, which is only 48 hours, and that's not 3 days 3 nights. And that the the modern religions, if you read the Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, the modern religions who celebrate Easter and all this, they are literally celebrating the celebratory days of the Queen of Babylon, the whore goddess, and that they are unknowingly worshiping, quote, in their terms, the Antichrist. I told my Catholic friend, I'm like, the Catholic Church worships the Antichrist. You're sitting there fucking paying tribute, and like, he's like, that's not true. And it's like, well, have you read the Two Babylons? And he's like, no, he just won't answer. And it's like, dude, I know so many. I know you're not into this debunking Christian. Well, I don't know if you're into the debunking Christianity thing, and I'm not doing it to debunk it. I'm doing it to find the roots. But all the religious people are always extremely upset whenever I bring up the 3 days 3 nights thing, even though it says specifically in the Bible, and it's like, okay, well, are you calling the prophets? Are you calling these apostles liars? Are you calling Jesus a liar? Because it says it in words. And it's like they won't accept the fact that their preachers are preaching perverted versions of Christianity, which is exactly what the apostles warned about. And it's really annoying.
Okay, well, let me push back a little bit. I'm not against debunking. We can debunk Christianity all night if you want. I'm pro Christian in the sense that I think that there is an illuminant core. I'm not necessarily saying the institutions are the best. I'm not also a big fan of Protestantism, which I know a lot of conspiracy people have more of an affinity for American style Protestantism. I actually see Protestantism as like a more divergent, like more of a, yeah, like a Isaac Weishaupt or whatever his name is. Kind of like it's a corruption, a seed of corruption, especially Calvinism, especially Calvinism. So
Yeah.
I'll say that. But okay, so in Catholicism, they do have, so Ash Wednesday is the day he dies, and he does rise on the Good Friday. So it's not like, I don't know what other church like does the Friday to Sunday, but definitely in Catholicism it is the Friday
Well,
and the
most
Wednesday.
churches is Sunday. Well, even
Well,
the fact that
Easter
the
Sunday is like the day that he reappears in the temple or in the mausoleum, and then Mary Magdalene goes in and sees him, just like it says in Luke, and she mistakes him for the gardener.
yeah. Well, there is a weird thing that Cooper points out about. I'm sure you're familiar with the ancient lore about the god that cuts open his thigh, and that in some of them he cuts open his thigh and puts a baby in his thigh to save it, but it was a reference to castration, and that there's a verse William Cooper brings up where Jesus basically says he can't fuck this chick because he's castrated. He's got a wound in his side, quote unquote. And that I mean that's kind of a whole different subject, but the
No, I think it's interesting though because there is a mercurial element to Jesus. Like, yes, I know on End of Days I've talked about there's a Chesed Jupiter element to Jesus, and that's true
yeah, yeah,
when he wears the blue robe. But there's also a mercurial element where he is the prince, right? Like a prince is that's Mercury, is he is that's the
yeah,
archetype of the prince. But there's also a secret sort of thinking that Sirius sits behind Mercury in the kind of the older astrology.
hmm,
And so the princess is really the star, like you're saying, but
yeah,
she's not the whore. So in this idea, she's not the whore. She's a virgin. Like she's pristine. Okay.
hmm,
But she hides behind, she stands behind the Christ. So there's an element of where Christ looks very effeminate. And there's an idea that Christ has to be a siski or a twin.
oh
So the
yeah.
twin
Well,
is,
that's
right?
I would say that's verifiable for sure through the symbology with the symbology of the doorway over Chartres Cathedral with the four constellations Aquarius, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus. But then if you look at the older tarot cards, number 21, the two bottom ones are mixed. The Taurus and the Leo are switched around, and that it has the same vesica with the Magi in the center, but in the Jesus mythos, the Magi is a male, and then in the tarot mythos, the Magi is a female. So this would be his twin, that which you're familiar with the phrase in Greek. Oh fuck, how does that go? Damn it, it's some goofy word. Those Greeks got goofy language, but it means twin. Damn it, where's my? I don't have any books over here, but the, someone who knows, can you look up the Greek word for twin real quick? Cause my browser's too slow.
I'll look it up on my other phone. Just give me a moment.
um, damn it. I mean, it's irrelevant to what I'm getting at, but there's verses in the Bible where Jesus says about his twin Didymus. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Uh, Di-
Thomas Didymus.
yeah,
I remember.
Didymus. Where Thomas is also the doubter too, wasn't he?
Thomas the Doubter is a different character, but yes, sometimes there's three Thomases that they think could have been, but it's not. Nobody really knows for sure.
Yeah. Same with the There's a myth about the beloved disciple that is unknown, which I technically think it's Lazarus. And then I think Lazarus became John of Revelations. He just simply changed his name because he, according to Revelations, it says specifically that he received a new name from the Philosopher's Stone, basically,
Well, that
and that
makes sense because the name of things. So if he received his true name, Ioannis, from
yeah,
the Philosopher's Stone, right? That's his true name. So that is the name of power. That's like him coming into full consciousness.
yeah, like ion is. I mean, we use the word today in science,
That's
ion,
right.
and that this modern science also adopts the words from the two mothers of ancient alchemy or the ancient mystery school religion, where it had one father deity and then two mothers, water and then mater or matter,
Yeah,
and then
Earth. That makes sense.
it's interesting how they flip the W upside down, so water becomes mater, and that
Well, it's Tara and Kali, right? Like that's how in Tantra we would understand because Tara is she is the air, but it's like the 3+1. But it comes
yeah,
down in rain. So that when it interacts with our universe or our world or our reality, it comes down in rain. But it's really all four elements mixed together. And
well
then
plus it's
Kali is the dry earth. It's the earth void of creation, really.
yeah. Well, plus you can find it in Egypt with the depictions of the male deity with the two female deities, one on each side.
That makes sense. And Jesus is also depicted as that, like that sometimes, especially in Catholicism and Greek Orthodoxy. He always has Mary,
Oh,
Martha, and sometimes Mary Magdalene, but sometimes it's Saint Martha.
huh. Yeah, there's also the Egyptians have a female with two males thing too, where it's like the female with Osiris and then with the other one and damn it, I can't remember the names, but it's
Well,
symbology and everybody uh they all the lower degrees of multiple even basically they see the sex symbols and they think that it's a sex thing and then like some
mhm, mhm,
offshoot
mhm, mhm,
happens
mhm.
where it's like a perversion of the doctrine.
That's how. That's 100. I can confirm. That is so common with tantra. Like Phil Hines. You know how Todd loves like Lieber Null and the Psychonaut. He talks about it a lot.
Yeah.
So that guy has now become a tantric, supposedly. I just think it's
Huh.
funny. I just think that you're totally right. Like everybody sees the sex stuff in tantra, and they're like, "That is the real mystery school." No, everyone who practices real tantra knows that karma mudra. That's what it's called, like sex yoga. That is a low form of knowledge. That's like, yes, it's useful at a certain density, but yeah, that's not the point. The point is so much more than that. That's like the first little
Yeah.
layer that people get lost in.
It's like there's things that they do to mimic the symbolism, but the symbolism itself is the pure essence of the doctrine. And the it's weird how the lower degrees of every religion and secret society are all practicing a physical story of the symbols and don't know what they're doing exactly. They don't understand that it's all symbols and like the whole Solomon's Temple thing. It's just a
Hmm.
model of the universe.
Yes,
And
yes, 100%, 100%. I do want to go back to something that you said because I've never even really engaged with this idea like publicly. But when you were referencing the Two Babylons book, so
yeah,
I do think that a lot of Western authors get this confused that there is a princess and then there is a queen, but they're very different in some ways, but they're also the same. Like the mother is the daughter sometimes. Like the mother, obviously the daughter arises from the mother, okay? So that's very obvious. But there is an element where the daughter has her own will. So that arises at the moon. That's what we would call Babylon, but she is in Buddhism anyway, and also in Indian Tantra, she is desireless desire. So she has overcome what they call the Mara or the demon of lust. So that is when you're talking about like Christ with the wound in his side. That speaks to me as like
yeah,
like what I said, the Sizgi, whatever how you ever pronounce that. It's like the conjunction of the sun and the moon, the son and the daughter.
yeah. The in the Magi stuff, the Magi is always in multiple religions becomes like this non-gender type person.
Yes.
The
But it's not
oh
non-gender. That like it's not people. I do think the trans thing people are using as a magical. I definitely think that that's magic. I think that's more magical than anything else. But it's important to note that it's not. She has a gender, just like Christ has a gender. But it's like people are conflating it because there's something called existence appearance, meaning the things that appear in the world aren't necessarily how they appear. Exactly what you said about sex magic. It's like the exterior is not exactly like how the book is. It's not how the words go. It's not how the story goes. It's just the play in front of you, but that's not really the
yeah.
meaning.
Well, the gender swap thing is a perfect example of that Kadesh Kadesha thing, where
Hmm.
because the male priests of Babylon would cut off their genitals and according to Tim Callahan's book called Secret Origins of the Bible, I think it's called. But he says that the male priests would cut off their genitals in ecstasy and throw them on the steps of the temple of the goddess Ishtar, and that that whole like thing, it seems like humans are very the way the Magi manipulate the masses isn't through specific uh, specific ideas, but more along the lines of emotion, in that they're controlling the emotion of the masses. It doesn't matter what the subject that's creating the emotion is, it's the matter of the emotion being created. That kind of goes to the if there is like a energy vampire type thing happening, that's why I would assume they're doing it, is to keep everybody psychically drained, and that they turn their own victims of their, I guess you would say, sorcery into the enemies of the people who are against them, and then they keep the, A versus B fighting type thing. With this, it seems like it's just like if you were running a jail or something, and you wanted to keep the gangs fighting each other and
Hmm.
keep them from wanting to break out. Jailbreak.
Okay, well, what do you think of this idea? Because you were saying this before too, and I want to let you finish your point about the two Babylons, but that they were saying how she is the Antichrist, so Catholics sort of worship her. I don't agree with that. I'll put that out there. I don't agree
Yeah,
with that interpretation because Mary is the daughter. There's something really interesting about her because she's cloistered, right? Like she's totally contained. I'm not saying she is the daughter, as in like she is the moon Babylon or whatever. She
yeah.
is. There is an element of her where it's contained, so she can never be the whore, and
Well,
she's a virgin.
some of
So
the some of the symbols of it are always, because like so like Isis is the sister wife of Osiris,
right.
and like that type of thing. It's like, to me it's like the astronomers didn't have a adjective for describing the stars and their movements and stuff, so they created these terms like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
sister
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
wife.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. 100%. I totally agree with you. I'm like, I listened to a Jordan Maxwell. I don't know how you feel about him, but I listened to him about the astrotheology of the 12 apostles today. And
Yeah,
even though I don't agree with everything he says, it's still interesting to me. And I think that you're totally right. I think that it's describing relational movements of the upper heavens rather than
yeah,
an incestual relationship.
yeah. So it's not that Isis was inbreeding with Osiris, it's just a symbol.
Right,
And that
exactly. I agree with that.
that's where the cults and stuff, they all start. It's like there's this thing in Freemasonry before it was corrupted by Illuminati, where the writers were saying, they were basically calling Satanism people that were practicing a corrupted form of a religion, and that so like that's what's uh it's not that the religion is some kind of controlled self-contained thing. It's the corrupted version, but it's that the people are running on madness in a way. There's
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
always try to explain to it to Todd and everybody else how it's like this gnosis of the ancients would, think of it like a press for a car factory. It's pressing out the perfect mold, and then that it creates an initiate who is gold of heart, pure, and that the once the doctrine is then, because in the ancient terms, Isis was the temple, Horus was the initiate, and Osiris was the doctrine. And so the doctrine, but once the doctrine was perverted, hence the lost word, or the lost generative force, the generative force of creating the initiate who's pure of heart, the lead to gold. But like, uh, when that doctrine was perverted, it then started pressing out car parts that were fucked up,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that the
Hmm.
so the initiate from these secret societies and open churches was then no longer, it wasn't creating a gnosis of a person that was pure of heart. It was creating a person with a gnosis of evil and corruption and misunderstanding. And I would say that evil could be defined as misunderstanding, because the person doesn't understand that they're doing the evil. They just do it because they're insane. Like these because it's like William Cooper says, it's like, does GW wake up every morning and say, I'm gonna do terrible things? It's like he rational. They use that whole situational ethics to rationalize
Mhm.
destruction and chaos, and it's very
I would
dangerous
argue that
times.
I would argue that GW was like a total inversionist. Like his whole, it was not like I think William Cooper is like look, or Bill Cooper is looking at it from the perspective that he is somehow rational. I don't think GW was in any way rational. I think he acted rational in public,
Oh no,
but I
Cooper
don't
hates
think.
GW.
No, I know that. I know that. But I think he's giving him almost too much. I totally get it. I hate
Oh
GW
yeah.
too. But what I'm saying is, I don't think he acted from a place of rationality where he could even use situational ethics. I think his whole worldview was whatever we have to do their great work,
Yeah.
which
The
was
the
nine
greater good.
11. Right, exactly. Well,
Oh yeah.
what they at least what they wanted for themselves. I don't even know if he would justify it in
Oh
the
yeah.
terms of the greater good. Like I don't even know if he has a concept of
Well,
that.
well, I guess I wouldn't say that the situational ethics is really in the initiate's hands because they're all just brainwashed. But
No, I
li-
agree with you.
like, two things. Like GW Senior, he said in '91 in a speech that uh, he would implement perestroika in America, which is Russian restructure, which I would say is parallel to the Great Reset. And that he also gave Gorbachev the Presidio base, which is the same base that Aquino was at. But on the second note, GW was a Skull and Bones initiate, and their initiation. And this goes back to that wound in the side thing, where in the this is in the Illuminati initiation and the Skull and Bones initiation. They both have quote a red string tied around their pedunda, which is genitalia, and that so the magi are initiating their initiates to be separated from their sex force, and that and so the Illuminati and the Skull and Bones are both taking this separation of the sex force initiation, and it's very interesting. I'm not sure. Uh, it's just very strange because it seems as though aspects of the ancient rites of the secret societies are still being practiced today, but they're being used for the forces of darkness, I would say.
No, 100%, and I agree with you. Everything you said, like how this first density, you called like I wrote down pawns, or like these like initiates that don't really know what they're doing. Like they don't know the greater goals. They're just kind of like in it. They're just moving, and they're little, they're very compartmentalized.
Yeah,
So I agree with that, and I also agree that there's the inner sort of core. They don't really know what they're doing either, but it was initially to forge people. Like I do think that originally Catholicism was to forge people, like you're saying,
yeah,
pure of heart, and I think that even makes sense in Catholic iconography, like the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Sacred Heart of Mary. You like when you look at it in a Kabbalistic way, that is that Tippereth, so the sun, which is gold. So
yeah,
yeah, there is definitely a mystical layer that is accessible. Now, if you just go to a Catholic church, you're not going to learn any of this shit. Like you're just going to be part
oh
of the
yeah,
corruption of the congregation. And I know
yeah,
from being like as a kid, like everybody's having like affairs, people gossip about each other. Like it's a very corrupt. It's I'm not even talking about clergy. I'm talking just about people in the church because there is not like this, it's like a fake morality, exactly what you said. It's
yeah,
like this like put on, it's like fake virtue. It's just like how wokeness works. Like there's
yeah,
that thing where
exactly.
like we're good because we love Palestine, or we're good because we love black trannies, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But that's not what virtue is, and that's not what goodness is, because you can be a really shitty person and have those ideas.
yeah. They have no honor. They don't see things for what it is. It's like William Cooper says, magic is where the the words become interchangeable with reality, and so the magi are using the words in these memes to and not the don't picture the the common picture meme, but a meme as an idea is it's kind of like Terminator 2, where imagine the robots as a metaphor for the meme, and the robots start self-replicating, and then so the Magi knew that they could make artifices of they could make they were word artificers, and the
Yes,
and
yes,
they
yes.
were making these machines of words that were self-replicating, and that the people, they knew that they couldn't write something down on stone or steel to have it withstand the test of time, and so they created these machines of words which would travel through time, and then uh, it's very spooky, like how advanced in intellect they were to have created. I don't even know if they even knew that they were creating such a thing, but the fact is they definitely created these word machines that travel through time, and that, I mean, it sounds stupid to say it in that
No, it doesn't. It
sense, but
doesn't. It doesn't. This is what Tracy Twyman was talking about. This exact shit. And Dan even was talking about this with me. They use AI is the new talking head. That is the like the ancient one, like the whatever Babylon owl head,
yeah,
whatever. The like the John the Baptist severed head, mechanical clockwork head.
it's the new
AI
god.
is the that's the new AI. But AI is so fucking dumb. Okay, AI is dumb. The algo is fucking dumb. It might have parameters that make it seem very restricting, and it does. But
Yeah,
it's not smart. It's not living.
excuse me. Yeah, the I think it's just another method of control. But
100%.
onto the third, the third tier of the Illuminati, the inner circle. Um, they don't believe in anything. I think, and that they believe purely that uh, we're gone when we die, and that they are, and so they want to collect all the material things that they can during their life, because they believe that they're gone in the end, and that they don't actually believe any religion, and that's why they're so akin to perverting other religions, because they have no honor. They'll just do anything, cut anybody's throat to get ahead, and that that's, in a way, that's what the Illuminati looks for with the initiations. People that are scum. That are,
100%. 100%.
like this friend that what or it's like the whole debauchery thing, the same as the oath of the Jesuits, where they say they take an oath that says as long as they're helping the order, that it's okay for them to do the most disgusting things, and that like murder and rape and all this other stuff included. So
Well,
they
that's
are,
what that guy, Sam Bateman Fried. I mean, Sam Bateman, that like effective altruism. That's exactly what that is. Exactly the same thing. It's like do what thou will. In
yeah,
further, like further your sort of goals, but it doesn't matter who gets hurt as long as it's in service to the quote unquote greater good.
yeah, that's exactly. I do believe the Crowley was the whole do what thou wilt was simply him restating the goals of the Illuminati's on what they want the initiates to do, and that the which brings us back to the intelligence thing, where John D was, you know, he started the MI5 or MI6 or whatever, and that, you know,
Yes.
and he was a magi, in that they used codes and encryption, and that even today the intelligence in our country, which is ran by the Vatican, by the way, is they have a big thing on the right in front of their building of this giant encryption, and that anyone who can break it basically gets a job there. But I mean,
That's why they love classics majors and area studies majors and people who are really they're not necessarily the most innovative, but they have good problem solving and they are good at memory retention because then they are good at doing equations in their head, even if it's not with math, because you don't need to use numbers. This is one thing I've actually recently discovered. You do not
Yeah,
need to use numbers to do math. You can use conceptual ideas. It
Uh,
works just as well.
yeah, it's in the symbolism too.
Exactly, exactly. That's what I
That's what.
mean.
Yeah, in the ancient times, they wouldn't allow any of the people to enter into the secret rites unless they knew geometry. And the geometry, the symbols of like Isis and Osiris and all these other characters, no matter what religion it is, they are parts of an equation. And that these ancient people like put this equation together with the stars, and that these calendar dates, and like uh, I don't know how they did it. And not to mention the fact that they were using in both Hebrew and Greek the gematria and Tamara and the Notariacon of the Kabbalah, and that even other cultures were doing similar things with um, the words and the symbols.
No,
You
did
know,
you know? Okay, I have got the craziest thing. For as long as I've studied Sanskrit and like Buddhism and a little bit of the Puranas and stuff, I didn't even realize that fucking Sanskrit and Hebrew have a direct relation. Like they've people have already mapped it together. Like the letters are the same. Like you can almost posit them one to one.
yeah,
I had no idea that that was true. The writing, I'm talking about the sort of the characters. It's very weird. I just
oh
kind of
yeah,
hit me because I was looking at like Gimel, which is the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It relates to the Sanskrit character of Ga, Gha.
mm,
So there's something really interesting about that, and both represent the sort of symbolic teacher. So Ga is considered guru syllable, and Gimel is considered the it's like the poor man or the rich man prostrating himself in front of a poor man because he is rich in material goods but poor in knowledge.
huh,
So there's something really crazy about how all the like how the language is so important, and you're totally right. Like and Greek is like that too. Greek has that numerical code behind it, just like Hebrew does,
oh yeah. Same
just
with
like Sanskrit
Aramaic.
does. Yes, 100%. I think Aramaic's probably the more pure version, and then we've all sort of, corrupted it into our other whatevers.
Yeah, the ancient. There's some like ancient Coptic Christianity type stuff that has to do with Aramaic, and I think you could link the demonology of the Old Testament to the Aramaic concept of the Jinn, the fire genies.
Yeah, smokeless fire. That even is a very alchemical concept, right?
Yeah. Well, plus the fact that because you were talking about the hearts earlier, I wanted to bring up how the heart symbol is simply the eternal flame upside down, and that's where the heart symbol comes from, is this upside down eternal flame, and that this the story of Jesus and that whole thing is he is the symbol of the eternal flame, and that's what people don't get in a way, and it's complicated, but like the it's like the eternal flame is symbolized by that lamp that burns 1,000 years, and by the golden fleece of the Jason and the Argonauts, I think it was, and the
Okay, so Clint, let me just interrupt you for a second. I'm sorry. So you're talking about the eternal flame. Well, that's really interesting because I just said Gemel. Well, what is Gemel? If you're saying the upside down heart and then has a flame on top of it, that is Gemel. Like that's basically the Hebrew letter. So if you draw like a heart and then put a little flame on it, that's the letter. So
huh.
I just think that that's so crazy. And also, yeah, I have this thing where I think Christ is like the outer density. Like he's the sun and the sun, like both sun and son, and so he represents sort of a kind of illumination, a Luciferic entity, but not necessarily separate from yourself. Like you're saying, it's gnosis, It's not really an entity. It's really a process. And maybe
Well,
that's what Christ is. And then the daughter is kind of like the secret knowledge. She is the one who lets it all happen. She's the alchemist who mixes it together, like you were saying with the magician.
well, the um, to not like go through a million subjects, basically, that I've traced the symbol of Jesus to the same as the green lion of the alchemy, and that which has to do with tarot card number 7, and it also has to do with, excuse me, the summer solstice and Cancer. Excuse me again.
No,
Cancer with
don't worry.
Mars. Mars will be at 90 degrees on the horizon, and that's why the number 7 on the tarot is strength because of Mars. But there's
That
a
makes
weird
sense.
this whole tarot connection with the zodiac or with the star maps is very peculiar. Like I guarantee there's probably some type of uh, I don't know if there's a type of tarot for China or not, but I mean I've studied
Well,
that I Ching for quite some
you know
time.
the you know it quite well, I Ching. That's basically related to the 28 lunar mansions. I mean, you
Yeah,
can map them onto it, right?
yeah. Well, I mean the 64 Gua or whatever is definitely for the 64 cycle of the moon.
Yes, 100%. Because like lunar calendar is so important in Chinese, right?
Yeah, because the ancient they what was it 13 months I believe. Uh,
So should we go back to a lunar calendar, Clint? Is that what you're saying?
well, I think it was a more precise possible. It's definitely what the ancient people used. I mean,
Yeah, no,
that's
I agree with that.
what
I'm
the
just being
Hebrews
funny.
used. I'm pretty sure.
No, they did. Even the Jewish calendar now is still a lunar calendar.
Yeah, because they were all traveling at night in the desert, and because it's too hot to travel during the day.
No,
And
that's
that's
right.
what they were lunar people, and that's why that mountain was called Sin Ai, the mountain of the moon, and their god at the time was the moon in the Old Testament, and that
Yeah, sin. Did you and
yeah,
you not talked about this once, didn't we? About sin, how sin is like Shiva, sin is
Allah too.
Rudra, and sin is also the Old Testament God. But sin
Yeah,
is not a bad god. I know some people like Jordan Maxwell is like they worship this evil moon god. Well, A, he's not a moon god. He's the god of secret knowledge. So that's
yeah,
Pluto. So Pluto or Dath, and his
yeah,
number is 5. And you can always see that number come up with him because the 5 becomes the 1, like the 5
yeah.
elements of creation, right? And then they coalesce into one
Well, it's
chakra,
all about
one wheel.
the symbolism. That's what the high priest couldn't have any superstition. Otherwise, they wouldn't
That's
understand the
right.
symbolism.
That's right.
And that it's weird how the whole so in Islam, Allah the moon, his first angel is quote Malak, which is the king of the bottomless pit, and that the well, it's parallel to the symbol of Abaddon in the New Testament,
Right.
and which is also Moloch, which is interesting because the calendar date for that is May 1st. This has to do with the Illuminati because the Illuminati in Bavaria was founded May 1st, and also the worship of Moloch is on May 1st, and that they're a continuation somehow of I don't even know if they knew that they were a continuation of it, but in ancient Babylon, the this red banner or this red this this group that uses red as its sole symbol, has when they came to modern times, because they were emerged through the Alumbrados and how the cowboys would wear the red sash,
Oh,
but
that
like
makes sense. Actually, now you're really like, because I don't know any of this
well like
about the
so
Cowboys and stuff. Like, this
well
is all new, but it's all clicking.
France during the revolution, the Illuminists they started like burning the grain to create a false famine, and so they made the king look bad, And then, because I believe their motive was because the king gave America a bunch of money to help fight the British, King Louis the Eighth, and like, so they were like, "Fuck him, we're gonna destroy this country," and that so. Because I mean, the French Revolution. Well, it's also weird in a mystical sense because Paris used to be called Per Isis, like
Hmm.
Isis,
Hmm.
and that the Eiffel Tower is a giant monolith,
Hmm.
the symbol of the
Hmm.
lost word,
Hmm.
and that the
Receptor for Vajra.
um but like after so they forged letters by the king telling the people to burn down their own town halls, and then they um basically they destroyed all the luxury items. They made it
Hmm.
so there was no luxury items, and so like basically the Illuminati went to France, starved everybody, forced the people to kill the king and the elite class, and then once the new France was born, they raised the red flag, and that then it was even worse off than before the grain shortage. But like that model that they did the same model in Russia and with the Bolsheviks, and Germany with the Reichstag and the Nazis, because they notice how they both raised a giant red flag. The Russian flag is red, the
Hmm.
Nazi flag is red, and then
Hmm.
China next. China was their
Hmm.
most modern victim, and this is why it's so. It makes me so mad that people don't understand that it's not about the statues and what their content is in modern
Hmm. Hmm.
times.
Hmm.
It's the fact
Hmm.
that the Illuminists are destroying the past, which is the same model that they did in China, where they destroyed these ancient temples and statues, and they made the people, you know, uh,
Yeah,
all
they gave
adhere
them
to
cultural.
Marxism.
Yeah, they gave them cultural amnesia. It totally reset society.
Yeah,
Hundred
they
percent.
they destroyed the ancient Chinese tradition, which that's even worse than genocide, because that's it's just such a terrible thing that these Illuminists did to China, and like nobody even really understands it. And then the Chinese were raising their fists like this in the pictures, and now they've got black people doing that, and it's like the black people don't understand they're victims of the Illuminist conspiracy because the Illuminati is using black people and the rainbow crowd as a tool to further the Illuminati goals,
Hundred
and
percent.
they can't even see it. They don't. It's like Dr. Rob. I asked him. I'm like, so you've been avoiding me, and he's like, no, no, no. And it's like, well, it fucking feels like that,
No, he
motherfucker.
definitely has. He definitely has. I mean, he has with me too, like big time.
Because I've asked him simple questions to try and help him argue better. Because he's got really weak arguments about this whole white supremacy thing. So I asked him, please
It's that the
define it.
whole idea of white supremacy is very fake. I mean, it's
Well, he
fake, fake,
can't even
fake.
define it. Neither could his friend. And like, I'm like, well, how can I understand if you can't even define it? And like he called Trump a racist, and I'm like, well, I'll believe it if you can prove it to me. And so he sent me this thing with like 50 different, uh, 50 different things that it was saying that weren't facts, and I couldn't verify any of them.
No,
And
because it's not fact based.
yeah,
Nothing
and I
of it is
asked
fact.
him. I replied to every single point that was made on this article. I took a screenshot of it and replied and said, well, and I would say the question about how this thing wasn't verifiable. And then at the end of it all, after I did like hours and hours of work replying to every statement on this article that he sent me, he said, "Well, you're just going to have faith and trust me that he's a white supremacist."
No,
And I'm
because
like,
that's
"What
what
are
they
you
do.
kidding me?"
That's their logic. They defer to their blackness because it's very theosophical. I actually this kind of hit me, even
Yeah,
though
it's a
I'm like
religion.
very. Yeah, no, it is. It's because a lot of like the black magicians of the '90s. I'm not talking about black magic. I'm talking about black guys who practice magic, like Bobby Hemmett. There's quite a few of them. They were kind of these Afrocentric like people,
You mean like
chemesticists.
stage magician or like
No, no, no,
magi of
like
the
like
mind?
magic, magic. anyways, they would go and host these classes in like Harlem and like all the botanicas, and they would talk about like, but they mixed this idea of like theosophy, racial theosophy, with like Chemesticism, which is like Egyptian kind of trappings of it's like ritual magic using Santeria and like Egyptian shit, symbology all
Yeah.
at the same time. Okay, so they would talk about how black people are special, how black people are elevated consciousness, how black people were born with magic powers in the world. This is very theosophical, like
Yeah.
very theosophical idea.
It's
Like they are the special race. And so they don't really need to work on their personal evolution because they're already elevated above white people. And they are the ones who
yeah.
need to teach
Well,
white people, or not just white people, obviously, but
but
in general, it's like they have to teach white people about their superiority. So that's what we saw. It's very theosophy.
yeah, it's the same exact model as how they did the same exact model on the Nazis, where the oppressed become the oppressors basically over time. But like the Nazis, the whole Aryan race thing, they were like telling the Illuminists were telling these people that they were related to, and then Weishaupt even did it with the Crown of England, where the Illuminists convinced the Crown that they were part of the tribe of Judah, and that they were the chosen people, and that this whole idea of like filling the filling the head of the initiate who is not a portfolio initiate. There's no paperwork on the initiate, but the person's initiated into the ideas, and that they use this is a whole like kind of a get your goat type concept where they're using the idea of making the person think they are special. It's the same thing that happens in Illuminized Freemasonry, where in certain higher degrees they're making the candidate feel special, and that this special feeling is that's how they get the people to be under the spell, because they get addicted to the feeling of this power trip, and like it's all so maniacal. It's like I'm always telling people online, it's like, well, I'm like, the Illuminists are giving these minority groups fake wins, and then they're hiring all these diversity hires to help further the idea that there's this fake win going on, and then this whole like it's just so pathetic. It reminds me
It
of like
really is.
being on the playground and some kid starts narking on everybody because they get suckers or something, and it's
It's
like,
very Mongolian, and not Mongolian, but like Mongols, like Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan or whomever,
yeah,
because they also instituted. People don't realize this. China was almost never in like over 1,000 years. It generally was never ruled by ethnic Chinese. It was almost entirely ruled by Manchus,
huh,
um, different tribes from the northeast, and then also obviously the Mongols. Even though it did have a bureaucracy that was made mostly of Han Chinese, so ethnic Chinese, but they
yeah,
instituted a racial caste system or caste system,
yeah,
and they put Han Chinese at the bottom. So it's exactly like what you're saying. Like they're taking the natural sort of like inheritors of the American Constitution or the founding fathers, whatever, which are white people. That's just the facts. Maybe Native people, you could argue, like Mohawks and like Iroquois, because they obviously contributed in some ways to the idea of the Confederacy and all that stuff. Okay,
yeah.
and democracy. So even though I know you hate that word, so we're gonna pretend that I didn't say that, but it is kind of the idea, the Republican system. Okay,
Yeah, well,
but
they've definitely put the old school Masons on the bottom of the class
that's
system,
what
and
I mean. That's what I mean. That's what is so fucked up. And then the Prince Hall Masons are having their moment, right? Because that's who, like Eric Adams. He's like a police chief. He's in the black. He's like in a black Mason fraternity. I mean, it's all these Prince Hall Masons. And the problem with Prince Hall Masonry is that they have completely forgotten the real potency in it, and they look like fucking idiots.
well, it's
Like
just the
they just look like
Illuminati.
buffoons.
It's like Al Sharpton, Farrakhan.
Yes.
When I showed Dr. Rob the pictures of Al Sharpton and Farrakhan and their Masonic regalia, and I was like, well, these people are members of what you call white supremacy because no black people are allowed in the white lodges. And fucking the lodge in the Illuminist thing, the Great White Lodge, is on the Star Sirius, and like these
Mhm.
Illuminists they're playing some head games, hardcore, you know,
Yeah,
like that
hardcore.
song,
No,
head
they are.
games.
It's all about narrative and counter narrative. It's all about stagecraft and counter stagecraft, spell and counter spell.
Yeah,
That's sort of what I've realized since like the assassination attempt or whatever even that was. Because I mean, it is just so obvious to me that all they know how to do is these like I called it in a DM. I called it like it's a C grade film school thesis. So just like bare bones budget, shot on an HD handheld camera, looks like shit, like very like it's just film school, film studenty. It's not. I don't know. Does it feel multidimensional to you? Because it doesn't feel like that to me.
I think that it's parallel to the JFK thing, except they missed, and that like the William Cooper says when he was in the Navy that this is part of the reason why he left was that the other reason part of the reason why was because Nixon had a coup against him or whatever, and
Oh, he
his
totally did.
commanding officer on the first Pacific Fleet ship or whatever was committing treason against the Constitution, and that but the other reason was that he read that JFK was considered a security threat by the United Nations, and that that's what they admitted to killing JFK. The United Nations did in the top secret classified documents, and that the William Cooper later in his career he Freedom of Information Acts who were the directors of the Secret S and the the intelligence agencies and the IRS and the ATF and stuff, and he finds that they're all the same director, and then he finds that they're all chartered by the United Nations International Monetary Fund. So the Secret S isn't uh, the Secret S is just like the IRS and the ATF. They aren't quote enacted into law under Title 26 of the United States Code, and so they're not an actual part of quote government end quote. It's a private corporation created by the UN under the 62nd Trust of Puerto Rico, which is that's why Cooper says that Jacqueline Kennedy she tried to get out of the car because she seen it happen, and that they bound her to a secrecy, and that she was then guarded for the rest of her life by the Secret S. Probably to keep her from talking. You know.
Well, that's why she married the. That's why she married the billionaire, the Greek guy, because his family was rich enough, powerful enough, influential enough to protect her. I mean, everybody sort of knew that. It wasn't like a love marriage. It was like a total. It was like protection. It was like
Yeah,
ally with other forces. I'm not saying she's a good or bad. I'm not making a judgment.
yeah. Well, I wonder if she was. I wonder if the guy was in the mob.
Well, he definitely was. I mean, a Greek shipping magnate. Come on, that's like sounds like a pirate. But
Yeah.
also, I want to go back to something that you said was really interesting. So the last actual like good pope that the Catholic Church had was Pope Paul the Sixth, who stopped being a pope in 1978. So he was the pope during the
Was it?
period where JFK was assassinated. So it's really interesting
Well,
that the. Sorry,
is
Clint. Go ahead.
isn't he the Pope that was assassinated after 33 days? Or am I thinking of someone else?
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. He no, sorry. So John Paul the 12th or 22nd, 23rd, 23rd. Okay, sorry, John Saint John. So it's John. It's Pope John XX3. So 23, and I don't know, whatever. He died on stomach cancer. He was on hiatus. I believe. When did JFK die?
1963, September 7th, I think.
Okay, that is crazy. So John the 23rd died of stomach cancer on June 3, 1963, while the Vatican Council was on hiatus. And then they replaced him with John Paul the Sixth. But interestingly, John Paul or Saint John or Pope John the 23rd, he is considered to be the reformer of the Catholic Church. So that's interesting in and of itself. But I do think it's weird how the UN they would have had a shuffle because obviously the Vatican wasn't fully taken over. I don't think by 1963 entirely. Yes, the Vatican, the Jesuits have always been working to undermine aspects of the church. They have so much power and money. It makes sense. I don't think Catholics are inherently good or anything like that. But I do think there are competing factions. So I think that with that, it's really interesting that there was like a sort of a mini coup at the Vatican during that same year that JFK was assassinated. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I think the guy that replaced the guy was Nazi. I'm pretty sure well, at least I know the Benedict guy was for sure. He was there's pictures of him saluting to Schindler and all this. But
Oh yeah, he was in the youth, right? He was in the Hitler Youth, but he wasn't a
yeah.
Jesuit. So maybe it was better to take the fascist over the Jesuit.
Well, I
I don't
believe that the Temple of Mithra is there's a Temple of Mithra directly underneath the Vatican itself, and that
that makes
the Mithraism was I believe that the highest people in the Catholic Church are they're in the Mithra priesthood, and that the Cooper says something really weird about the Mithra thing where they had 7 classes of classism, and that I think that's what's happening in society. We're in this caste system of 7 classes, and that and I think there is a like a Hindu type origin of Mithra, and that the
there is. There's an Iranian there's an Iranian
yeah,
goddess who's named Marasi, very popular in Buddhism still to this day. She's the goddess of invisible light.
yeah.
And so, but she's the goddess of the treaty. But it's not the physical treaty. That's the difference between her and Mithras. Because
Well, it's
Mithras in the Roman times is really the apotheosis of the treaty. So it's like the worship of, like when the UN or the WHO forces us to sign a treaty, because they worship the treaty if they're Mithraic, right? Like that's their whole thing, is that
yeah.
that's kind of their god.
Well, in
So
modern times, oh, sorry.
no, that's okay, Clint. I'll just finish this thing. She is not the treaty with that is like bound in paper. She's the oath-bound treaty of the cosmic law, meaning that the way the cosmos works, that is the treaty with us, our individual treaty, not a collective treaty.
Yeah. Um. Well, the so in modern times, the Pope, he's basically most likely the embodiment of this, this ancient thing that, because it is originally female. That's why the Pope wears a female garment, and that the but the
That would
mitre,
make sense.
he wears a hat called a mitre, which has a etymology that comes from
Yeah,
Mithra,
yeah.
and that so he is Mithra basically, and that you know
Well, it makes
the
sense too because people are always like, "Oh, Mithras is tranny or whatever," but actually, if you understand it from the original, it's the daughter or one of the daughters because there's two, but she is the mind-born daughter, so she's like God's hidden light inside of him, and it pierces through the clouds into our reality down into hell. That's the idea. And
yeah.
so, but when she hits the sun, she appears as a man. So it's like the magician card. It's like the magician standing there, as above, so below. He is taking in the light because she's not contained in a body. She's non-physical.
Hmm.
So he takes in the light, and it's then in him. But it's really in all of us. That's the idea. Is it's in
Well, it
all
reminds
of
you
us.
of the Quippaloth spirit of the Hebrew, but to bring it to the Illuminati, the Mithra in Gematria is 365, and that the Illuminati, would always use the solar symbol. They would use any symbol of the sun. They would never use the word Illuminati.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And that but the circle with the dot in the center was one of them. And that the when they turn themselves, you know, the outer core of the Illuminati in modern times is the communist movement, which
Mm-hmm.
well one of their cells, and that the communist movement uses the symbol of the sun rising in between two mountains, and that the communists say, "Are you a fellow traveler?" And then they'll say, "Yes, I'm traveling from west to east," just like the Masons of modern times. And that so they're searching for this light, quote unquote, and that the damn it, what was that? Oh,
It's
excuse me.
really interesting about communism to look at their symbol of the hammer and the sickle, though,
Oh
because
yeah,
when
Jupiter and Saturn.
well, okay, you could say that their sickle is not Saturn. This is what I found really interesting. If you look at the alchemical symbol for Ceres or Ceres, Ceres,
Ooh,
which that is the actual sickle of the communists. The sickle for
Virgo.
Saturn is like a scythe, right? Like it's like a threshing scythe. But
Yeah,
the series one is the handheld. It's the
yeah,
smaller one because it's the everyman. It's like the peasant farmer, right? That's what Marx talked about. That's what Mao talked about.
mm,
Transforming the peasantry into the revolutionary. So they're turning the the farmer. So the Ceres, who that is the the goddess of cereal of grain,
yeah,
into the
Virgo.
sickle, and then then they change her into the hero, which is the hammer, Thor of Jupiter. So that is, I
Yeah.
kind of think that's interesting.
Well, it's like the old term for Virgo was spica, or like the top of a grain of the grass, and that the
So
spike
that,
comes from that. But there's a weird thing. There's a depiction in the there's always this depiction of Saturn, or well, actually, let me stick on the Jupiter subject. But this idea of Jupiter, and then Virgo, like Jupiter is IU pater, which pater is Latin for father, and
hmm
then the Virgin Mother of the grain uh, is damn, what's the name of that? I think one of the names is Mare, uh, like Mary, and that the because there is like a so if you were to take the Old Testament God Jehovah, he is Thor, and that um
I'm totally with you. He is Jupiter. He is Thor. He is Zeus. He is Rudra. He is Baal. People get mixed up with the Saturn thing, and I think that that's deliberate. I think people don't understand what Saturn is. Saturn is not the father god like that. That's not his archetype. Saturn is the restriction of Jupiter. He pulls Jupiter back because Jupiter constantly is trying to expand his empire. Saturn is what holds him. It's what restrains him. That he's actually like a force in some ways. I don't want to say good because this is not. It's you shouldn't assign qualities like that. I think, in my opinion, but it kind of holds him back and kind of like keeps him within the bounds of reality. Otherwise, Jupiter is just going to fly off and like we're going to go to Mars. Like that's basically their idea. But I want to ask you, what do you think of this idea that they are just a lot of them anyways, like at least a huge portion of them, regardless of their faction, because we're saying, or at least I'm saying that there are multiple factions, you're also saying that maybe a
yeah.
lot of them pray to Jupiter, not the planet, but maybe this idea of this like heroic god who is just like explosive and powerful and expanding, constantly creating.
Well, on the outer core there might be, but the inner core is basically atheist.
I
But
know
the
that. I know that. But do you think maybe in the conceptual idea, I don't mean worship as like a god, but maybe as a higher principle?
well, there is like a it's like the this whole idea of like higher selves, that would be like a the soul science, and that the soul science and that idea of it has been it's the ancient people. They were this whole gnosis that they were trying to achieve. It wasn't. It's hard to explain. It wasn't like from the. It wasn't from the. Damn, I'm really stoned. Let me just spark this other joint.
I'm gonna look for my pipe
It's
while you're,
like
but I'm
it's
gonna
like
stay on.
I had this gnosis once where it was it was about because I was studying the Tetragrammaton for so long, and then I came to realize that the word Jesus was a pentagrammaton, a five-letter secret word, and that the Greeks, their word was different, and that the basically that the word Jesus is the quote word of God. It is the lost word, and that the the name of Horus in Greek is Iuses, or Jesus, basically. And that there was an ancient system that is very complex. Of It's really hard to tell anybody who's not initiated into like certain like really high degree Masons. I could fluently talk with them about it because they know the symbols, and like it's really because I'd have to go over all sorts of stuff that's really hard to like kind of put out there. But it's interesting because you've been self indoctrinated into this Asian system, which is very similar in that
Well,
the
I even understand the 5 points because it's Dath, it's the secret sphere, it's knowledge, it's true gnosis, non-dual
yeah
gnosis. So
um
it makes sense. Like you can just look at it in a kabbalistic way and understand it immediately. The Dath is the secret sphere. Its number is 5. It's above the moon. It's also
yeah
above the sun, but the sun is not the real appearance. That's why I always say the sun is kind of the false appearance, and what
yeah
happens on the moon is the true appearance. That's why sin, they would worship sin and say, and then people would say, oh, it's the god of the moon. No, that's not really how it works. It's just that the moon is the reflection of that higher light, whereas
yeah
the sun is the reflection of the material light, the light with
yeah
heat.
well, to bring it to the Olympics, the symbolism of the spheres, because it's like some certain, I don't remember which cultures, but certain cultures would say that they were at the language of the spheres or some shit, and like,
Yes, 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 yes.
or they would have these conceptualized spheres. But like in modern times, it's like uh, the Olympics uses the symbol of five spheres as their symbol, and that five
Yes,
interconnected spheres, and that
yes.
it's like certain groups through time, certain religious. There'd originally be seven for some say the seven sisters of the Pleiades, but others for the seven lights in the sky. But then it got broke down to five, and then what's weird is that the Illuminists of Germany, they brought it down to four spheres, and that's
Yeah,
where the Audi symbol comes from.
what is 4? 4 is Jupiter. 4 is
Huh?
Chesed. So that's why they worship their, well, I'm not saying worshipped. I think that you're right, in exactly right. Like I agree with Clint, they are atheists. But they have a higher sort of conceptual understanding that they
Yeah,
are
there's like
looking at this thing where they're like, we worship this conceptual idea. Whether that's inside of themselves or external is
well,
not really
plus
the
it's
thing.
mixed
Even
with
about the 5, I can answer that. The 5 rings. So there's this idea that the 5 luminaries, because if you take away the sun and the moon, because if you say, because okay, so if you look at a Kabbalah tree, the sun and the moon are on what pillar? They're on the middle pillar. So Dath
yeah,
is a higher order sphere of that pillar plus Kether. They don't count that. Those are of God. The sun and the moon are of God. The 5 other outer planets, meaning Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, those are
yeah.
the 5. Those are the original 5 luminaries in Tantra, even. That's also a Tantric thing. And we also
Yeah.
have only 5 chakras in Tantra because the sun and the moon are actually assigned your left and right eye. So I think that's quite
Yeah.
interesting.
That's very similar with damn, what was I gonna say? Something about the four Jupiter what's isn't Jupiter's symbol in astronomy four?
Yes. The alchemical symbol for Jupiter is 4, and the
Yeah.
alchemical symbol for Saturn is that reverse.
Oh, so about the I was gonna bring it to the Nazis and the swastika,
Okay,
where
let's.
the this one Freemason in the Arcana of Freemasonry writes about how the damn it, what's the name of that those stars? I think it's the Big Dipper, and there's a certain star on there that's like the key star or whatever. But so he was saying the Big Dipper would through the year the the points, the 4 points, the I think they were the points where the Aquarius point, the Scorpio point, the Taurus point, and then the Leo point. Those 4 points were where the Pleiades would be, or not the Pleiades, the Big Dipper would be in the sky, but it would be rotating like a clock.
Yeah,
And
that's
that,
the whole idea.
yeah, and then the legs on it were the legs on the swastika. And so the swastika was a symbol of the sky map based on the Big Dipper.
Hundred
And that,
percent, 100% accurate.
yeah, and then the Nazis. What's fucked up is that so the Nazis inverted this Buddhist symbol, which was sacred, and then at the same time, the Islams they started doing something which it's hard to explain, but in masonry and in witchcraft, you circumambulate the altar 3 times clockwise, and then the Islam started circumambulating the altar counterclockwise. And so the Nazis took this Buddhist symbol, turned it counterclockwise, and simultaneously, because the Nazis and the Islams they were
Yeah,
like in
intermarriage.
cahoots.
Yeah, exactly.
And that it's weird that the occult symbols that they would use would also be parallel, where
Well,
the
Islam
circum.
is the global homo religion. That's the
What's that?
religion Rockefeller talked about. He said that they want to make Islam is the vessel. I think that was his exact word. The vessel to like forge the like age of Aquarian religion because it is like the weirdest. It can accommodate all these kind of other beliefs in it, but it also is like they can institute certain legal things and people will and now liberals to say, oh, we have to like be nice to the Muslims because they're like oppressed or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, someone who knows mentioned it was the star Polaris. I forgot about that because
That's the center point. It's white Tara. So if
yeah,
people are listening, they can look up a picture of white Tara. She's seated. Her legs are not. She doesn't have her legs. Her legs aren't moving. They're totally under her. But then if
yeah,
you look at a picture of green Tara, she has her left leg sticking out, meaning that she can come into reality. She can come into action. So if you think
yeah,
about it, North Pole perspective, what color is the aurora? The aurora is green and the Polaris is white. So there you go. And so the energy that produces around it is green and the inner core is white.
oh, yeah. What's interesting
Sorry,
is
I didn't mean to go
Polaris is also in Hebrew it's Adonai, and that the god of the north, and that the which the antique masonry they used to venerate the north for Polaris, but then eventually turned to a solar thing when
Yes.
the but the eye of Horus in ancient Egyptian was the Polaris star,
Yes.
and that but it was also the tip of the pillar of the I don't remember which pillar, Jachin or Boaz, one of those 2 pillars, but the pillar was basically the pillar started at the North Pole and then extended to the star Polaris, and that was considered the northern hemisphere. Uh, that was considered in alchemy the upside down triangle, the fire.
Well, that makes sense, right? That's even what Jordan Maxwell talks about. Not that I love Jordan Maxwell, but I did listen to a show
Oh
today
yeah,
for the
I
first
do like
time.
Jordan. He's cool.
He says that they did have this idea of the Great White Brotherhood. Now, was that a racial thing? He thinks it is. I personally don't think it is because I think if we look at the
It was magic.
Siberian, it's magic. Well, that's what it is. It's about your Clint's right. So it's that's what it is. It's the Great White
Yeah,
Brotherhood. They were the original people. They were in the sense of like the original Masons or Illuminists, whatever, and they
yeah,
worship the North Star, and so do Buddhists. So do not all Hindus, though. A lot of Hindus actually belong to the solar cult because Vishnu, and people who are familiar with who don't know who Vishnu is, if you can imagine like Hari Krishnas. So
yeah,
Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu. Okay. So Krishna isn't solar, he's actually Saturnian, but there is an element where Vishnu took over the sun cult of Surya. So Surya is the actual spiritual god, he's the god of the spiritual sun, but his cult pretty much disappeared, and he's only venerated really in Shakta Tantra, so goddess Tantra, or Shiva in the Shiva religion, because Hinduism isn't really a thing. Like Hinduism doesn't exist like how people think of it. There are multiple
yeah,
sects, factions, temples. I mean, it's very diverse.
yeah. Well, I was gonna
Sorry,
mention
Clint,
that.
I just wanted to say that.
No, you're good. In the 33rd degree, they still wear the white hat, and that's the parallel symbol to the Hebrews. The two goats that are killed, or well, one of them's killed. One wears the red string, the other one wears the white string, and so in after Freemasonry, after your 33rd degree Mason or 32nd, you then can enter other orders. And so one of the other orders is the Shriners, who use the red cap. And that the lore of the Shriners goes, and this has to do with Islam, is that their caps were originally white, but then in the city of Fez, they slaughtered 40,000 Christians, and then they dipped their hats in the blood that was running down the streets, and that I do believe this is the same red symbol as the Illuminati, and that the if you look up Shriner and then type in Islam or Muslim,
Yes.
they all wear hats that say Islam and Muslim, even like fucking Truman, and these aren't black people or anything. These are all white people wearing Islam
Yes.
hats, and that
Yeah, because why? Because Islam preserves the original cult. Seven sisters. If you look at the Kaaba, it's seven yonis is what we would call it. So seven like vaginal sort of orifices in the side of the cube. Those are the seven sisters of the Pleiades. They come down onto the moon, very prominent symbol, but they're not the
yeah.
moon. They're the
Well, it's
star, right? So they're the
yeah,
star and the moon. And then what is the Kaaba? The Kaaba is the container
the
for the
cube.
dragon, for Rahu. It is not Saturn. People think it's Saturnian.
Ah,
It's
that's
not
interesting.
Saturnian. It's at the sun. He is the Jin of the sun, not my name, Jin. The
Yeah, yeah.
Jin with a D. And also, I want to
Well, that
shout
makes
out
sense.
someone who
Uh,
knows because he's always really supportive whenever I don't know, I'm sure he watches
uh,
your show, Clint, but he's always such a, I don't know if he's a guy, I apologize if you're not a dude, but anyways, I just want to
um,
say like thank you, I appreciate it. I'm really bad at shouting out
oh
people
yeah.
in the chat, but I recognize him from all my times on
End
No
of
Call
days.
Rejects
Well,
and End of Days and all that.
before I forget, two things. One is that the Arcana of Freemasonry was saying that those seven sisters weren't the Pleiades, but they were the Big Dipper, and that
Well, it's related,
well, they were
they're
saying
they're intimately connected.
they were saying every 25,000 years or 10,000 years. I don't remember which, but I think it was 25,000 years. But every 25,000 years, the North Pole, because right now it's at Polaris, pointing at Polaris, but they were saying it moved from it alternated through those seven stars, and that but the second thing was about back to the red thing. Oh fuck, I'm really stoned.
No, but okay. So Clint, the Little Dipper is the wheel turning. Like someone is saying that I think in the chat. I'm not looking at the chat. I'm looking for something on my phone, not in relation to our conversation, obviously. But
Yeah.
it's the Little Dipper moves the Big Dipper. So we have this all mapped out. This is all like well mapped out. But the Pleiades are sort of the emanating. They're pre-turning. So the Pleiades are the menstrual blood or the red shift. Just think of it like that. It's just that's what it is. It's the red shift that happens, and you see 7 to 8 stars in the sky, but they're really this like descending red light. It's red shift from the stars, and so
Oh.
that preempts the turning of the wheel. So it's not that that's not that the swastika is the Pleiades per se, but they are
Yeah.
considered to be the force. So they come down, and what happens when you push hot air through one of those pinwheels, like a pinwheel like a kid has? If you push warm air, what happens? It turns, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's just pushing the warm air down, turning the wheel. So they always precede the turning. That's how it's described.
Yeah. It's the Great Sun Wheel.
Yeah,
The
exactly. But it's
oh
around the North Star. That's what I'm saying. The Pleiades are intimately connected to the swastika in position at the North Star.
yeah. Well, I did remember my second thing. About the dragon in the box. So I think I vaguely mentioned this before. I don't remember if I can't remember if I told you about it, but the one of the purest forms of the mystery, the symbolism, that I seen it on an episode of uh, what's the name of that show? The one where they're like in Alaska, it's from the '90s. Fuck, I'm really stoned. The Northern Exposure. So in the show there was a excuse me. In the Northern Exposure show, there was this episode in like the third or fourth season where the Native American lady, she had a play, and the play was this story that you were just saying in the Hindu or the not the Hindu, but
Yeah,
the
that's Hindu.
yeah, and that so in the story the in this I can also bring this story to the Jesus story and also,
Yeah,
but
let's
this
talk
is
about it.
hard to, that'd be a long talk, but like, so in the play there was a raven who was, you know, who would be the planet Mercury, and the raven, the trickster, was um there was a great chief, which I can't remember which, who the great chief would be, possibly Jupiter or something, but like the
Well,
great
that makes
chief
sense.
had a box, and that it was, or a cube, a Kaaba, and that the box contained the great light. He captured it and put it in there, and that the the chief had a daughter, and then the raven turned himself into a pine needle, and then while the daughter was collecting the water, the pine needle he turned himself into a pine needle and then went into the water, and then the daughter drank the pine needle on accident, and then the raven impregnated her, and so then the raven then was turned into the baby, and then the daughter had the baby, and then the baby was eventually born. The great chief trusted the baby, and that the eventually the great chief showed the raven, who was the baby, it showed him the box, and the raven said, "Can you please open the box?" And that the great chief opened it to show the raven the light. And when the great chief opened the box, the raven swooped in and grabbed the light, and then gave it all back to the people. And that it's interesting because the Egyptians have kind of this opposite story where they, instead of the light being taken out of the box, it's put into the box, where Osiris is convinced by 72 people to do this kind of like Cinderella fitting into the shoe bit, where where, where they convince him to get into this casket or this cube, and then they seal him up, and like uh and that the the same symbolism, that story is the same as the Solomon story with 72 demons.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Let me respond to
The
something before
Also the
I
Shemham
forget.
Faresh.
Oh, of course. Right. Right. The 72 names of God. Okay, but let me say something because it's interesting. Did you bring up the Raven thing to troll me? Because you know my name means gold.
Oh no, I believe that story is that's basically like it's really hard to explain, but it's the gnosis of the Jesus story,
Yes. Okay,
and
so
it's
in Chinese mythology, this is a very old Chinese story. The crow is actually the symbol of the sun. And it's a three-footed crow. Sometimes it's considered to be a three-toed crow. So it's like a trident upside down.
yeah,
There were seven suns in the sky. The divine archer shoots them all down. This is a very common story. I think it's even in the Ramayana. But this is I'm talking about the Chinese myth in particular. So there's a divine archer. I think his name is Yi Zheng, but I can't remember. Maybe that's wrong. But
yeah,
it's something like that. Anyway, so there's only one luminary remaining in the sky. And what is it? It's a crow with a three-toed foot. And so my name can refer to gold, but it can also refer to this like process that happens with lightning at the sun with like a trident. If you threw a trident downwards and it passed through the sun, it becomes like electric. That's the idea. So that is like that idea of adamantine, like Wolverine's claws, or like,
yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah. That's interesting about the adamantium because um, Wolverine seems to be the symbol of Osiris.
yes. And
He,
I don't know. I want to say the thing about the casket. I think that maybe you kind of clicked something for me when you were saying the Egyptians have the opposite story. So there's clearly two different sort of versions of the story that they're having a hard time reconciling. Because I do
yeah,
believe that like the casket thing, that sounds very technocracy. That's like
well,
putting all our consciousness in the black cube.
yeah, well, it's it's the symbol of them hiding the great gnosis of the initiation.
Yes, yes. It's taking knowledge and restricting it and putting it inside a container, just like the Kaaba. It's
Yeah,
like they because there's a huge clock tower right beside it that has like a crescent moon upside down, and it gets all
huh?
these crazy lightning strikes. You can watch them all on YouTube, and it's like hundreds of hours of like crazy lightning, insane lightning striking this clock tower. And when the clock tower gets struck, it is green. It illuminates green, like the light of the clock tower turns green. And it's really interesting because in Kabbalah, they often say that one of the secret densities of all the spheres is green, even though green is associated with both Mercury and Venus at different
Yeah,
times. Green, so a flashing green color occurs. So I just think that that is so fucking crazy that they knew this like 2,000 years ago and
yeah,
could write it down. And then someone like built something to sort of capture it.
yeah. Well, the
Sorry, I
Masons
know. I didn't mean
say,
to go
no, you're good. The
on.
Masons say that the people that made these stories were the great builders. You know,
Well, that
the
makes
people that
sense.
built the pyramids, and the pyramid is. This is how I know the world is 100% round. Is that the pyramid is built with its northern face. Uh, if you measure the southern face and then you measure the northern face, the the fraction of the two or the difference is damn it, I can't think of the math terms because I'm really stoned. But the if you were to take the west side of the pyramid and you were to draw a straight line up from the its side, and then you were to
Okay.
take the east side and draw a straight line up from its side, those two lines would intersect at exactly the North Pole. And so the pyramid itself is 1/2 degree of longitude on all of its sides, and the northern side is the exact fraction of what it would be on the latitude longitude maps on the it's hard to explain, but the because not only did they make it so it was the I'm not sure exactly why they made it the prime meridian of the ancient world, but like the pyramid itself, according to the Masons, was each side was made at 365.242 Egyptian yards, which are what is it, megalithic yards or something, and like one how does that go? Like one megalithic yard is 1 second of time, where the Earth's spinning. Um, and that the or is it, damn, I can't think of that. But anyway, so the four sides of the pyramid, if you were to go around the whole thing, it equals the 4 years, which the 4 year point for the calendars is the leap year day, and the leap year day in ancient Egypt was attributed to the star Sirius C joining Sirius A and B, and that that it's basically the Egyptians had to change their calendar 5 days, and that the when Sirius A, because it was really just Sirius A and B, those were two. It was a binary star, and then Sirius C came in, and then and somehow it's like, and this is a weird theme throughout all the secret societies, is that, or even ancient religions, is that they believe that like our solar system goes around Sirius, like it's the center point, and that but like, but they didn't just attribute it to Anubis or Sirius C. They also attributed it to the 5 demon days of Egypt, which was Isis, Osiris, Nephthys. What the fuck's the other ones?
So are we saying that Osiris is a demon?
Well, it's hard to explain. It's like,
No, I'm not. I'm not challenging you. You know, I'm very conceptually open-minded.
well, it's you gotta. I just keep it as symbols. It's symbol.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just wondering. I don't know.
Um, well, they did call the 5 days the demon days, and that it was associated with the Nile River, and that the Nile River was very important, for the farmers. Hence the god Spica or Virgo. But like the which you were talking about the small Sith, but like because if you consult that one book, Jordan Maxwell is always mentioning Masonic astronomy and something or other. It'll show Virgo, and she has a small Sith, just like what you're saying, and that like the
Oh, a goat. Oh my God, that makes sense. Do you know what a goat is, Clint?
yep. Well, hold on before I lose it. The
Okay. Sorry, I apologize.
this is the origin of alchemy, in that the Nile River, the black mud of the Nile, it wasn't about people. Chem is a reference to the mud, and that and then the ancient story was that the chief deity had spoken himself into existence with the magic word, and that and then the chief deity had created the material plane with the magic word, and that the chief deity made the people out of the mud, and that and then later in time, take it to the Greeks with the Jesus story, which is the same, because the two fishes are also the two pillars, the Polaris and the North Pole, and then I forget the southern one, but the Jesus performs the miracles and is said to have used the secret word to make the magic happen, and that this is the goal of Freemasonry, to find the lost word, and that the word is not necessarily a word, but it has to do with these symbols, and that the symbols of it all are the geometry that we're talking about. It's like, the symbol stories are geometry, and that's how you can recognize the how the stuff from China is parallel with the Masonic stuff from around the world, and
No,
like
it
the
is, and so is the native stuff. There's a lot of
yeah,
Native American mythology that fits very well with the Masonic pattern, and Grubb talks a lot about this. How some of the Australian tribes understood the Masonic hand signs.
yeah. Same with certain Simcha Jacovici believed there was a lost tribe of Israel. His mainstream, because there's a mainstream belief about the lost tribes of Israel, and then there's like Simcha Jacovici's theory, which he goes to this small town in China, and he says these people are the inheritors of uh, the ancient Egyptian stuff or whatever, and he lays out this big long table. He puts all these different kind of fish on it, and he asks them what kind of fish is the fish that is acceptable for you to eat, and that they all point to fish that are what's that word that the Jewish people say about their food?
Oh, you mean on Fridays, like Shabbat?
No, 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 kosher. They
Oh,
point to
kosher.
the kosher fish because Jewish people don't eat certain fish like
Yeah, they don't eat
crawfish,
shellfish. Yeah, exactly.
suckerfish. Um, but it does seem like there could be possibly. Oh, fuck, am I? Damn it! I'm just gonna go get papers tonight. The it does seem like there was certain people that there is some sort of real thing to the 12 tribes, but it's not what the mainstream is saying it is. Because there is
No,
a
it's
thing in
it's a
China.
that's what I think.
Well, in China they blow the ram's horn and they wear the checkered the checkered uniform and the high priest garb. I can't think of what it's called. I got pictures of it, but it's
So this
clearly
is
a
like an ethnic minority, right, in China?
well. It's yeah. Even the tribal lore of the people say they're not actually from China, but like
Hakka? Is that what it
it.
is?
Well, it's like they were.
Hakka?
I can't remember the exact. You'll have to
Okay,
watch the
okay.
documentary, but it seems like these these tribal things are to break this down to back to astrotheology. It really does seem like there's surviving groups of people who worshipped the star story at a different time and have a different because there's 12 stories combined to make the one great story.
Right, right. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Because, yeah, I agree with this idea that there is a 12th tribe, but I don't think it's necessarily like an ethnicity, like a
Yeah,
racial ethnicity. I think it's actually a bloodline. I think it's a bloodline of like someone who it could have been like a Genghis Khan. Like, I totally think he was one of them. And I think that's when they say, like, oh, he had like millions of descendants. I think that's what they're talking about.
yeah. Well, you also got to remember that when you enter into a secret society, that you are blood, where you're swearing on your blood and you become a brother, and that your mother is the temple, and that your new father, is the doctrine. And that's why George Bush and stuff, he said he was, quote, born again. When they directly asked him if he was a Christian, he said, oh, of course, I'm born again, and that, so he's saying that he's born again through the mystery schools, and that,
I know, because he definitely was not a Christian. No
yeah,
matter how you, I mean, maybe he's a maybe because the four corners, like the swastika, the four corners of the Process Church, is like what Jehovah, Christ, Christ consciousness, not Jesus, Christ
yeah,
consciousness, Satan, and Lucifer. So maybe his thing was Christ consciousness. I don't know, but so you can say because there are a lot of evangelicals actually that are part of Process Church that are in that stream of Christ consciousness. So it's kind of interesting and crazy at the same time.
yeah. The Luciferian stuff, and um they are see, it's like Blavatsky. She admits that or she, I believe it's the Secret Doctrine, where she specifically states that she believed that the God of the Bible was the serpent of the tree of knowledge, and that so she admits that she believes God is Satan, and that the or Lucifer, because Satan's mentioned in the New Testament, but I believe it's Lucifer in the Old Testament. Or I can't remember, but it's
So
like,
Satan isn't like a singular being in the Old
well,
Testament. This is what people like a lot get confused at. There's no singular evil in the Old Testament.
well
There's
we can
just with God or against God. That's
well
pretty
we can
much it.
simplify it even more to where the the dragon in the box is the symbol, and it's not necessarily good or
100%.
evil or anything. It's
100%.
because once you attach good or evil to something, then you're losing sight of what the symbol is,
That's what
and that
yeah, I agree. I totally agree, Clint. And that's why I said the Kaaba is the sign of the dragon. It's the sign of the eclipse. So if you think of it like the eclipse always happens in a magical experience before you cross the abyss. It's like everybody knows this. And
that's
so
interesting.
I think that instead of being like, oh, Saturn, well, no, because part of okay, so if you think of it in a Kabbalistic way, there's no negative. God has no negative qualities. Like zero, he has zero negative qualities. God is only good, and the only good, like the way goodness manifests is in loving kindness. That's the Hebrew idea. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's nothing bad about God. So when people are like, "Oh, Saturn's evil, Binah's evil," like the Jews worship Saturn, like, yeah, maybe that's true. I don't believe that
Well, it's
personally,
like
but
cosmic
it's
jobs.
yeah, that's what it is. It's like little portions of God who take on little personalities. It's not a god. It's not a sub deity. It's just like a little. It's like a piece, a shard of him, and he's like, okay, well, what do I have to do? Well, okay, yeah. So it's Saturn. He has to pull the lever, the string, or the not the string, the rope that keeps Jupiter in tow. That's all it
Yeah.
is, and it's like when you overburden one of the conceptual ideas with like exactly what you're saying, the Manichaean. Remember, Manichaeans are not Christian. So this idea of like black and
Yeah.
white and good and evil, that is not a Christian view. That is like a third century Babylonian corruption of a religion that did span from France all the way to China and existed
Yeah.
in China up till the 1600s. But it is not really a Christian worldview. So I think that a lot of contemporary Christians have that idea where everything's like, oh, this is like satanic or this is Christian.
Well,
Well, just have
they
some
don't.
nuance about it.
Well, they don't understand that these ancient systems are. It's a science.
That's
It's the
right. That's
lost
right. That's right.
science of
That's right. That's right.
Atlantis type of thing. It's an ancient system that was used by the great builders, and most of the great builders are. We have that are, and it's a great mystery,
No,
and
you're
it's my
totally right, Clint. And yeah, we have to treat it like a wisdom science. You have to treat it like this is not, these aren't even fixed ideas. They're kind of like always in motion. That's sort of the idea is that even for them, like people who are trying to rule the world, their beliefs are constantly shifting. They're not stuck in the past. Like we tend to think of them as stuck in these old Babylonian religions. No, they're very modern. They're very
yeah
into progress. That's why I think it's so funny when people who think they're so anti-establishment think they are progressive. Progressivism is the exact opposite of anti-establishment. Progressive is the establishment, has always
yeah
been. So I want to say that because I do think that that is funny.
oh, yeah. Well, the progressivism is like insanity in a way. It
Yeah.
really reminds me of the Irish lore about. I don't remember if I've ever told you the what's it called? It's where it's only handed down verbally. I can't think of the term, but there's an Irish lore that was destroyed by the Catholic Church, which was only orally spoken, and that the basically it goes that there's two kingdoms of the fairies or the elves, and that one kingdom was called Seelie, and they were the forever the same elves, and the other kingdom was called the Unseelie, the forever changing, and that they were considered the dark elves, the like madness and evil, and that in the storyline, the forever changing eventually destroys the forever the same, and that so, and it's interesting because it's like Terrence McKenna's theory of time wave zero. It's like a graph, and it's really ironic too because he's Irish. So he makes a graph that shows uh that shows habit, which would be the forever the same, and then novelty, which is newness, which is the forever changing, and it eventually goes down to permanent changing. And that's part of where it's like the culture is like a runaway train that's it's building the tracks made out of this nonsense, and it's continuing the metaphorical train moving, and it's just going out of control with this non-stop insanity of people attaching meanings to the symbols and words which are not which aren't real, and so then it creates this like insanity of all these different religions and cultures that are basically operating on bullshit.
I mean, that's the whole thing, and that's what I think I learned about doing the Tracy Twyman series is that a lot of their shit is just off. It's just bullshit. It's just like complete bullshit. Like we can look at it and be like, yeah, it's crazy to believe that, but they actually believe some of their own like they're high on their own supply, like for real.
Yeah, yeah, they're all
So
ego tripping. It's just like
exactly.
Mark Passio. Did I ever tell you the story about him?
No, tell me the story.
I think it was like 12 years ago or 13 years ago. I called into his show, and, and I've got the recording of it, but he edited it, so it's but you can see the where the wave is edited because somebody didn't chop the wave at the bottom points. You know, it's like the wave goes up and then it just clicks stops, so you can see it's edited. But the so I called into Mark Passio's show and I'm like, is it possible that your past satanic or Luciferian membership has compromised your opinions? And he just straight up blew up on me. He uh he talked shit about me for 45 minutes, and then when he archived the radio show the next day, he edited it out and put in a new edited reply. Because what he said when I asked him that, he admitted on live radio, he said, quote, I was never a member of any Luciferian or satanic brotherhood or church, end quote. So he admitted that he was never an ex-Satanist. In like all of his fucking video things, he calls himself ask an ex-Satanist. You know, he labels it that over and over, and it's like he's operating on false etymologies for law, and like you know, it's like, and then one of his followers, who was one of my friends, I brought this up to him because there's this whole it's complicated, but Mark Passio has created this legion of people who are think they're intelligent but are spewing this nonsensical rantings. You know, it's hard to explain. It's like how Alex Jones is like saying all this stuff that isn't verified facts, and then his followers have. I guess there's so many people that listen to that. That's not a good example, but like say the whole Jay Dyer crowd, all those people that
Okay.
follow him,
Yeah.
he's giving them false gnosis through what he's saying because he's not aware of all these ancient things that we're talking about.
No, he is. He
Well, I
knows.
mean,
I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if Jamie's like listen to this or whatever, but yeah, the whatever. Sorry, Greek Orthodoxy is Kabbalah. Their
yeah.
cross, you can put it right on the tree and it fits perfectly because they fucking know. They
Well,
fucking know, Clint. They
the
get
the,
it.
the
They
thing
see
though
it.
is that hold on the original the term cross in Greek is stauros, and that stauros doesn't actually mean cross. That's what it's used in the book. In the Bullinger Companion Bible, he specifically states how every etymology for the Greek word for what they're saying is the word cross doesn't actually mean cross. It means single stick. And that the so that's why I say all the modern churches worship the Antichrist according to the Christian terms, because they're worshiping a Jesus that was on a cross when the original one was just on a stick. And that the plus the
Yeah,
day
because
thing.
it's all unified. There's only one pillar. The two colored pillars are it's our bullshit. It's our perceptions. It's our stupidity. It's our ignorance.
Oh
It
yeah.
isn't real. That's what the thing is. Is there's only the one pillar is white, the center pillar, and so I totally agree with you. And there's also an interesting Sanskrit link with the word for stick that appears in the New Testament 44 times. It's called scandalon. Skanda as a deity name is the son of Shiva, who holds a fucking spear, just like the
Yeah,
spear of Longinus.
just like
So
Wukong has that staff that can
yes, the dragon
grow.
emperor pillar, and it can grow and exactly. So the whole idea is that it's really a key. So the Greek Orthodox made their cross more look like a key, like because that's what the idea is. It's a key. It's not a fucking cross, and they know. I have interacted with so many Greek Orthodox people throughout my whole life. They fucking know. That's the reality is that they know Greek is a mathematical language. I mean, all languages have a mathematical basis, but Greek is like Hebrew in that they remember it.
Oh yeah, but there is this thing where it's like, um,
And Jay knows about all this ancient shit. He really does. He'll never say it because it's giving away the game.
well, the thing though is that they don't understand that the chief deity is typically the symbol of the initiate, and that it's interesting because in tarot it's the opposite, where the chief deity is the uninitiated and that the fool, and that it seems as though in tarot there is a fifth suit, which is the fools, and that it's like this it's the parallel with the like sacred clown of the Iroquois or whatever, or not the Sioux natives, but there's also sacred clowns in other cultures too that are
Yes.
um I
And
don't know
there's
what the
also
Chinese one.
Metawiwin, the medicine societies, and we should not forget there are secret warrior societies that were very Masonic in their everything, in the secret warrior society lodges, and Mohawks still have that, and their flag is fucking purple with a chain around it, around three trees.
That's
So
interesting.
it's clearly that there were in their stories. There's a story of a Mi'kmaq chief who like did magical battle with these Jesuits, and then he lost the battle and he converted to Catholicism. It's not because
Huh.
he was like, I hate all things native. He was like, their stuff is a little better. It's maybe a little more preserved. It's maybe a little more whatever it was. So even though he was a great medicine person and he supposedly rode on a shark, very similar to the Hawaiian story about Maui. So
Huh.
there's the seeds that are everywhere. Like there's the linkages between very different places in the world, and it is really incredible. And so yeah, there is some kind of brotherhood. I don't think that they're that aware.
Yeah, because the symbolism is because you can know all the symbols by their looks, but if you don't know what the symbol means,
That's
then
right. That's right. That's right.
yeah, the story is irrelevant. If because the gnosis is understanding, it's like seeing. Well, part of one of the gnosis is seeing how that Alaskan story is parallel to the Hindu story,
Hmm,
or the
hmm, 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 hmm.
and like that's like the mathematical connection where we can see that the key elements of the story are fitting in place with other stories exactly, and that's what masonry is all about, is the linking of the ancient stories. uh but the clown was also the like the witch doctor, and the witch doctor was always basically the wizard, and in ancient cultures, the witch doctor was consulted for whenever the village or anything would happen. And in modern times, the witch doctor is now turned into nothing. You know, it's like it's irrelevant to the. That's where the, you know, in Australia they called the witch doctor the wise man, and that the wise man or the witch doctor was the real door to the spirit world because the wise man would drink the ayahuasca or the psychedelics and or through certain meditations possibly connect with the spirit world, whereas the rest of the tribe couldn't. And so and then the false witch doctor of the world, who's the king of the world, the Pope, his the word Pope, Jordan Maxwell says it, Pope means door, and then cardinal means hinge. And so in the symbolism of the Vatican, they're saying that the Pope is the doorway to God. And yet in the ancient tribal cultures have been destroyed by this new doorway, to where the old doorway was always the shaman or the clown or the, you know, it reminds me of, remember that Drunken Master movie?
Yes.
uh well, it's like so the Drunken Master is the shaman basically, and that he's
Mhm.
showing Jackie Chan these different styles of fighting. And then Jackie Chan comes to a gnosis at the end of the movie where he realizes that the hidden style was all styles combined. You know, that gives me goosebumps to say because it's so legit. Too legit to quit. You know, because
This is the thing is that the you always have the trinities. That's how it's always borne out, right? Like just like you're saying, like there's this kind of like antichrist thing because it's anti-Gnostic. But it's interesting because someone pointed out in the chat that when Jamie was on, she described Eastern Orthodoxy as more Gnostic, meaning that the church never lost its gnosis. That's true. So I think she was telling the truth. I don't think that was an error in any way on her part, because even though Jay rallies against Gnostics and acts like they're like the most evil thing, like, yeah, there were evil Gnostics, 100%.
well,
But the idea of Gnosticism is not in itself evil, because it really means that you value knowledge as the higher principle, but it can also mean wisdom. So I think that there's totally merit in people being Eastern Orthodox. I'm not totally ragging on it, but what I am saying is that they do know it's a magical system. Jay definitely knows. He's very careful in his presentation
well,
with
the
colors and
problem
stuff. He
though
never
is
does it so obvious.
a lot of people they don't they've never read John Allegro's book, and that they think it's some kind of joke, and that the shamanism, that they think that it's not real just because it hasn't happened to them. And like personally, I've taken the Terrence McKenna mushroom dare, and I've talked to the mushroom ghost 100%, and it was real. And I've drank the ayahuasca, and I've seen the ghost snakes make the pictures, and I've seen dead Indians who were staring me down and shit, and like weird, you know, like seed face people things. And like they think that this is all just like the common atheist. They think that these things they're seeing are just in your mind, quote unquote.
Hmm,
And
hmm,
like
hmm,
they don't
hmm.
understand that it's really the spirit world, and that they don't understand that this technology that was used by these ancient peoples, you know, the John Allegro argument basically is that Jesus was the mushroom. But I would say it's possible that uh, Jesus could, if it was a real person, could have been a powerful shaman who, excuse me, it somehow imprinted his spirit on the mushroom. And like, because when I took the mushroom dare, there was literally a spirit in the room standing there, and it was speaking in English out loud, and it felt like it was my friend or something. It was the weirdest shit. Like, and for anybody to say that it's not real without them actually trying it, you know, it's not something that this is why in the Amazon jungle the witch doctors, they would all have secret names, and they would never talk about the witch doctor stuff in front of anyone who wasn't a brujo or an initiate of a brujo, and that because they knew that anybody who's if say so the power of medicine. Say you give someone a medicine, and they're not an initiate of the brujo, or they're not a brujo themselves, and that then they say they don't take the medicine properly or something, they still remain sick or get sicker, then they blame the shaman for the controversy, and then the shaman is like, well, you didn't take the plant right, you didn't follow the instructions, you have to follow the instructions. And that so then the brujo is immediately, like crucified by the tribe, thus the secrecy, because but because of such secrecy, the tribal lore has gotten to such a small point where it's like it's a lost art basically. Like, and I know that China had the shamanism because of the giant laughing gem mushroom, the orange laughing gem, and that in other cultures where like Japan was, they had mushrooms legal until like 2003, I think, but like they weren't using them in the correct ceremonial way. But it's like the Japanese culture and the Chinese culture were both very strong cultures that were accelerating in uh, not necessarily technologies, but fine antiquities and stuff, and like fine processing of like silk, and their writing systems, and like they were like a highly intelligent culture, and they were still using the psychedelics, and like it's like like Terrence McKenna says that he just believed that the psychedelics were improving the hunting of the tribe, because they could visually see better, and that it was improving the birth rate because they were having more sex basically, and that the but like the it's like the real importance of it to me was the ability to communicate with this spirit, that to because there's all these mancies that you hear about, like necromancy and stuff, and pyromancy, which is just divination through asking the spirit something or asking the fire something. But like botany mancy or plant magic is, that would be considered green or good magic. You know what I mean? And like the there's this huge superstition about it to where the plant medicines are all lost over time. Like the Malleus Maleficorum, the witch's hammer of Europe.
Yes.
They killed the apothecaries, and like
Well, it was also to burn the grimoires. Like there's Owen Davies has a great book on this, and it's all about the history of grimoire publishing. So it's not magic per se, but it's the history of grimoire publishing. So they would have these little factories all over, like these little what's it called, black market kind of factories, printing presses. So they would
yeah,
move them through the catacombs in Paris. They would move the printing presses to the different places while the secret police were trying to raid them, and they were often set up in like you're saying, in apothecaries, because apothecaries is very similar to alchemy in many ways, and so they were often dabblers in magic. So the grimoire publishers would sort of move around between Mexico, Andorra, and France, and sometimes Spain. But Spain was more dangerous because in Spain you would be put to death, whereas in France you would just be exiled to the colonies.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry,
Um,
I just thought that was really interesting. It popped in my head
oh
because I
yeah.
love
Well,
that subject.
the Illuminati were definitely making grimoires as well, but I think the tarot is a grimoire. Same with the I Ching is a grimoire also. It may be symbols, but it's a grimoire
Mhm.
nonetheless.
100%. Even I Ching even calls itself a novel system, meaning that I Ching is meant to be applied to other magical systems. It is intended to be part of this greater system. I mean, that is just, it's obvious from, how it exists.
Yeah, Yeah, the I Ching is its magical purpose. It's not really magical, but its scientific
No.
thing is that the Chinese created a periodic table of the elements of time, and then King Wen took those elements and then he put them in a certain sequence, which I do believe he was on mushrooms when he did it. But
See, this is the thing because Terrence McKenna was like a Luciferian or Temple of Set or whatever he was, and a
well, that's what
CIA
they claim,
agent.
but
I
that's what
mean, he
people claim.
was,
But
he
I've
was,
been
he
in
was.
huge debates with Jan Irving, like on
Oh, I know who
Facebook.
Jan is. Okay.
Yeah, and the I asked Jan directly. I'm like, so have you ever tried the Terrence McKenna dare?
Well,
You know,
no, I'm
it's
not. But you know, Clint, I'm not anti-psychedelic in any capacity. I obviously smoke
yeah.
weed,
Well,
and I've taken mushrooms.
they're thinking that they don't understand that Terrence got in trouble for hash at the airport, and he was, you know, just talking smooth to get out of trouble, and that's the only reason he was ever like on paper associated with any agents or anything is because he was getting out of getting in trouble with hash at the airport.
Well, this is the thing, Clint. He does his like pushing the psychedelics was obviously a CIA crafted sort of narrative. Now, if you get in trouble, sometimes you become more malleable to those agency influences. So just like happened to Bill Cooper, I'm not saying that it makes him a bad person. I'm just it just is what it is. Sometimes you come under influences just like people we know come under influences from certain DNC operations. So that's the reality, is that
Well, the
people are, you know.
well, that's what the people believe these days. But like, I know a guy who's from or actually he lives in Hawaii now, but he was one of Terrence McKenna's personal friends, along with so is that math guy Ralph Abraham, and like they just kind of laugh at people that are, but like, cause I could definitely see Timothy Leary as being possible agent or something, but Terrence, it's like because I've heard all of his work, and it's interesting because I have this weird, because William Cooper is like the opposite, and but somehow they were both pro Constitution, but like the Terrence admits that he's like, oh, I lied to the college professors at Berkeley and said I was collecting butterflies so I could go to these other countries and try to trip my brains out, or like he was in search of proof of the religion. Like he says he was in India and China and stuff sweeping the ashram floors hoping to gain enlightenment, and that like uh he eventually found that none of these modern day religions are something that will bring pure enlightenment, and that he
This is
found
what Terrence
something.
said.
Yeah, and that he found something in the Amazon jungles and in Mexico with the mushroom brujos, that he found real physical evidence of magic, because that's what he was after, and
Okay, well,
that
let me push back about this because this is exactly the Luciferian goal, is to erase, like to say, oh, none of their other religions even have any meaning. It's all in the entheogens. Okay, let's be real about those indigenous brujos in Mexico. As someone who has dabbled a lot in brujeria, like substantial, I'm just going to say that like a lot of them are poor, indigenous, and illiterate. So the reality is by measuring them by Western standards, I don't know, maybe they have some kind of spiritual gnosis. And certainly I do believe in the power of curantismo and curing and cleansing and exorcismo and all those like herbaria and like using herbs to heal the body. I believe in all of that, okay? I don't think that when Terrence was talking about that, I don't think it's legit because we those communities that they even took from Maria Sabina, when she died, she said that she made a huge mistake in giving the mushrooms wisdom away to these white hippies, to Terrence McKenna specifically. So and now we see Joe Rogan pushing the psychedelics like so much, and this idea of microdosing. I'm not anti psychedelic. I
well,
think
I'm
psychedelics are
anti
amazing.
microdosing.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. I was microdosing shrooms when I first did them because I'm really careful and I'm a very like this is just my nature, okay, is that I'm just
Yeah,
cautious. So I was doing this like in the early 2000s or like when I was like a teenager,
yeah,
so this wasn't like I wasn't like on a fad or anything. I just was like, I'm gonna start really low, which is smart, and see where you're
yeah,
at with it. So but I just think that people are like that's the thing, is entheogens prime you to be ready for a new world view. And if we are moving into a new world order, sometimes I just wonder, like a lot of what Terrence said is very Luciferian. It's like we're looking to progress, we're looking to like illuminate the masses. But the thing is like if you are, this isn't you, Clint, obviously, because you keep weird hours, you're a conspiracy theory guy, you're an
yeah,
artist. Yeah, this isn't you, but people who are smoking weed or doing mushrooms or doing DMT or whatever, they are like watching Netflix. Okay, I'm just being honest. They're like listening to fucking Ginger Spice or whatever the fuck her name is. Okay, they don't. They're not. They're
yeah.
not. They're
There's no
not like.
shamanic.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
They're not really doing it. They're kind of indoctrinating themselves worse, because it's worse if you watch those kind of Netflix things that are so woke, so horrible, so global
well, that's
homogenous.
what I was talking about. The perversion of the gnosis of the initiate, where they're running on madness, and
No,
that
you're
the
right about that. You're right about that. Totally right about it. I 100% agree.
well,
It
like
is a
that
kind of madness.
the mushroom thing is like it's like when you look at John Allegro's book and the wait, quiet. When you look at the mushroom thing, the Jesus mythos, they're eating the body of Christ or Jesus, and like so they're eating the mushroom. I'm sure you're familiar with that part of it, but like the uh, the story of it is when you use the pattern analysis, basically I guess I can put my guitar back. I thought my friend was gonna sit there, but when you use the pattern analysis and you look at the Aztec tribe, they had something called Tiananacatl, which meant one with the mushroom, and that there was something similar in Japan, but I can't remember what it was called. But they also had this other thing in Japan called seppuku, which was if they were dishonored, they would kill themselves, and that the
Yes, yes,
Aztecs,
yes.
yeah, the Aztecs did the same exact thing. I don't remember what they would call it, but they would ingest large amounts of this chocolate drink. Excuse me, and then they would the initiates who couldn't handle the mushroom experience would then kill themselves because they weren't meant to do it. It's a very strange, dark thing. It's not. It's hard to explain. It's like not everybody is meant to be like a brujo or something. Like
No, 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 that's the thing. That's the whole thing, is that I've realized is that that's the truth about magic, is that not everybody is meant to be a magician. Not everybody's meant to play with it. Maybe most people, maybe all
yeah,
people, okay? But there are going to be people who are interested in it or have spiritual
boosts.
experiences, so of course they'll be drawn to it. So that's the thing. So how do we approach it then, like knowing that it's only for people? The thing is it's always been for people. Like you always talk about, like the mystery cults were only for like men who had
Yeah,
owned their own home, had wife. Like a lot of those mystery cults really place the emphasis on the householder, which tantra does also. So I just think that that's interesting. But then I also think there's, we had this explosion in the 90s, but it even happened before that. It happened in the 70s and the 60s, of these like Wicca goddess, like all this
yeah,
bullshit stuff. And then we had Gardnerian Wicca, that's totally from MI6. So a lot of
yeah,
these like newfangled things, these kind of like new age religions, they're all bullshit in a way. Like yes, they
yeah.
may say true things, but they're kind of bullshit too.
Well, they've perverted anything original about it to simply suit the needs of their goals, and that's why I'm so against the mainstream. In the mainstream, they've turned Osiris into an evil thing
Hmm.
and they perverted the symbols and so on. But like, I always give this example. You can go to any festival and you can find someone wearing a flower of life tattoo, and then you can ask them if they believe that they're a god, and they'll say yes. And then you can ask them if they believe that we are all one, and they'll say yes. And those are the two main tenets of the Luciferian philosophy. And that's the goal of the Baha'ists. That's the goal of the Illuminists, to make the average person, fill them full of this
Bullshit.
power trip, yeah, and then empower them with, quote, pride. Think about the terms that they're using. They're using, and then the mainstream becomes, there's this movement called Pride, which is exactly, you can tell it's controlled by the Illuminists, because you know not that they worship Satan or Lucifer or anything, but the symbols of it, the rainbow is a symbol of Lucifer, and that the
Well, that's
pride,
crazy.
yeah, it's
Because see, that's the symbol of the dragon, is the rainbow when it's been purified of all its sins. So it's a
huh,
dragon, but it's a good dragon. It's when he comes up in his like
yeah.
consciousness. So I sorry, I just want to say that because it was
Well,
cool.
in our Aborigine in Australia, there's a great destroyer dragon that's a rainbow dragon, in that, you know um I would consider it in biblical terms, I guess, Leviathan maybe, but
Yes,
the
Leviathan. That's I agree with that.
yeah, and but they don't consider it good or evil. It's just something that is the destroyer of the physical plane,
Yes,
and
yes, yes, yes.
the controller, and that's why the mythos of it, Satan or Lucifer, is always bound to Earth, and it's not necessarily that they're bound to Earth, but they're bound to the material plane, and
Yes, yes,
and,
exactly.
and
No, this
so
is
they're
exactly the Buddhist story. You're saying the
yeah
story of right now.
yeah they're not allowed back into the spiritual plane. They're stuck here, and so they become the ruler of it, and then its worshippers then become the most successful in the material plane, whereas us who are adhering to the spiritualism, we will be the richest in the afterlife, basically.
Well, this idea of like going back to our original conversation about like Christ and the gold, having like gold in your heart, or making the perfect man through clergy through this process of different initiations. I'm not talking about ritual initiations, but maybe just Gnostic ones internally. So you're having these kind of conscious realizations as you progress through the older religions, I mean, even Christianity, but just earlier Christianity. So you're kind of moving through these cycles of like higher consciousness. You gain the heart of the sun, gold, but then what? I don't know. Shit, I forgot my point.
Well,
What
it's
we what were you
interesting.
saying? What were you saying before that, Clint?
Well, in Chinese, isn't there a red and then a blue dragon?
Yeah, so there that is the whole thing, is that like where does the dragon end and where does he begin? Well, we know that he only ends at Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. So the three outer planets, or the three supernal spheres of the Tree of Life. So it would be Da,
Interesting.
Tether, and Chokmah. But so Saturn does not clear the dragon. That's I always thought that was so funny, like in the mythology. But also his idea of like even being connected to the material world. Like yes, because when
Yeah.
he drinks the nectar of the gods. He drinks the Amrita. Okay, so the nectar, then Vishnu shoots out his chakra, his discus, and it decapitates him. His head falls on the physical earth,
Huh.
and then from his blood comes up all the plants that are both toxic and medicinal. So things like
Wait.
aconite,
Yeah.
henbane, all that shit, like things that are can be purified but are very toxic by themselves.
Yeah.
But then
Wait.
his
He must be the symbol of Medusa. So.
Well, is I don't know if there is a relationship with Algol, but he's the king of the eclipse. But he also is the king of the blood ocean. So he sits on a meteorite iron throne in the middle of an actual blood ocean. So I always thought
Huh.
that's such a
Well,
cool.
that's interesting because the Chinese word for Algol, the star, is a word that means pile of corpses.
Yeah, mausoleum. So that, yeah, you're right. You're right, because that makes sense even in the tantric conception, because we actually live on the carnal ground, but we don't just live on the carnal ground. We live on both the garden and the carnal ground. It just depends on how you interpret it, right? So that's really interesting. But then I was going to say his subtle body. So when his head got decapitated, his head is the physical body. So that is what swallows the moon. And his tail is made of smoke. And it's considered to be like a comet, like how a comet has like an icy, fiery tail. So that is the part that eclipses the sun. And that is what corrodes sort of our material plane.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because in the Masonic trestle boards, or well, not Masonic, but the trestle boards that the Christians use with the in the oldest ones of the oldest churches in Europe, it'll show the crucified person, and then but ignore that and look at the rest of the symbols, which is a red sun and a blue moon, and it'll have them on every depiction. And in modern times, they've tried to claim that those are UFOs, which is total garbage. But like it's just the symbols of the sun and the moon, or the two pillars, or the two dragons, red and blue, which equates to the two fishes of the and that's why it's weird because it says you will know Jesus by 3 days 3 nights, the same as Jonah, and Jonah is the one who's swallowed by the Leviathan or the dragon, and then Jonah gains the attainment of this secret knowledge that seems to be the connection between Babylon and the Greek Christian mythos, was this some kind of secret gnosis or knowledge that Jonah obtained while in the belly of the whale or the Leviathan for 3 days and 3 nights. But like the I always bring up how the story of the Osiric story has to do with the Christian story because it's
100%.
it's a symbol story of where the lost word went, and that in the Osiris story, the lost word was the phallus of Osiris, and but don't look at it like that. Look at it the symbol. So the
Hmm.
symbol is then eaten in the story by two fish. So the secret word went from Osiris's generative force to these two fish or these two pillars, and so then Jesus was then the next sole proprietor of the secret word in the symbol story, and that so
No,
the
this
secret.
totally makes sense. This 100% makes sense. Osiris Shiva. Shiva's lingam, his phallus, gets bitten off by a
Oh
wolf faced
wow,
goddess who is also his wife.
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so she takes his generative power away from him, and then it goes into, and then that becomes like the left-handed path. That becomes tantra. That becomes magic, basically.
Yeah, yeah, because Jesus in the mythos, the symbol is the sole proprietor of magic, uh, the
Okay,
great
so see,
magi.
it's all one system. It's all one thing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it is. I mean, I've studied it for like 15 years, and like Cooper's stuff that he brings to point, where Nimrod was the symbol of the dragon as well, the one that's bound to Earth, and that the Nimrod was the creator of the mythos according to the Masons. He was the first Mason, and that his city was Nineveh, which is means Saturn. But then his temple was the Solomon Temple, which is the two pillars, which are the the two dragons or the two fish.
But see, even the dragon thing, that's what I was trying to say too. Because his head is one dragon, and then his tail can be considered a second dragon, like a white and a black,
Yeah,
or a red and a blue.
yeah, yeah. It's also there's similar Viking motifs of a figure eight Ouroboros with two serpents that are eating each other. Um, What
And
like
he
the
is the Ouroboros kind of because his symbol is the figure eight. So he chases the Mithraic goddess. Um, and
well then
so
in,
he chases her up and down throughout the physical universe, so our planetary system, and but he in doing so he sometimes eclipses the sun and the moon. That's kind of the idea.
yeah. Well then in the Horus story and the Hercules story, they're both shown as a child holding a serpent in each hand, and that's the same symbol where because it's a symbol in an ancient Egyptian, the two serpents crossed the Hecate, or there was a symbol of it in Egypt. I think that's the wrong word, but it was the symbol for magic was two serpents, and that it's like this ancient system is because it's so attached to so much so much what's that word, I'm really stoned. It's attached to so much paranoia and like I can't think of the word superstition, that the people are misunderstanding because it's not about what the actual symbols mean. It's about the story that we can only explain with the symbols, and the because I mean we've talked about so many different things in this whole episode, but it's all part of this same ancient symbol story that it's like we have the story, but we don't know what it fully leads to, and it
That's right.
leads,
That's right.
yeah, because the
That's
ancient
it's so
people,
frustrating.
yeah, it's like the story though definitely has aspects of science of both, like energies and material substances and symbology of, people in general. Or it's really hard to explain. It's like the it's really weird because I never actually attached like physical dates upon anything. But once in like 2008 or something, I did have a psychedelic experience with two other people where that night there was a lunar eclipse and there was something crazy in the air that was made the spirits like appear hardcore
Yeah,
and
because
like
he dips down, right? That's the whole idea is he dips down. If the daughter and him are in a perpetual race, she is the bottom of the little dipper. That's kind of the her star. And then so she dips down, so that is she's dipping down and towards Algol, where he lives, right? Because we live on the carnal ground. And so you're able to, during a lunar eclipse, to dip down into um the spirit world, and so that's why they do things around astrologically and numerologically significant dates, because they know that we as humans, like, yes, it's cool to think about that we used to be able to fly, and I'm sure we did, and we had different powers and stuff, and a lot of Buddhism, a lot of Chinese Taoist stuff talks about people having magic powers, and I do believe it personally, but I
yeah.
do not, I think it's we've forgotten totally how to do that. So I think that when we think of magic, we think of these powers, but it's really not. That's not what really magic is right now. Magic is like our devices plus like numbers in the physical world. So like aligning things together astrologically, and that's what makes it much more potent. So that's why they do that. That's why it's so funny to me that they're so astrologically inclined, yet so unable to really. But maybe people are dumb. Maybe I'm being really overly optimistic, and maybe people are just so brainwashed is that we are
Well,
just heading into technocracy. I don't know.
there is I do believe there is um like telepathy is because that night I was at the during the lunar eclipse. Me and my friend experienced telepathy, and I was the honorable one because I didn't read his mind, but he kept digging through my past basically, and like he was saying all this stupid, embarrassing shit. I'm like, how the fuck does he know this shit? Like I don't even remember. I think I like had diarrhea once or something, and somehow, and I'm like, what the fuck is he like writing, taking notes of my life, like? And then I started realizing that he was reading my mind, and he was every memory he was accessing, I could see it in my head without trying to think about it. And like it was very. I was like, I kept demanding that he quit. I was like, this is bullshit, and fucking, because I was afraid that he was gonna get to the memory of the mushroom spirit dare, the Terrence McKenna dare, and then when he did, it was like he it's like he cell phoned the mushroom ghost, and then all of a sudden there was this other presence in the room of this thing that was like I don't know how to explain it, but he was incredibly mad at me because he stated that I was hiding the spirit world or something, and like that didn't tell him or something, and it's like, what am I supposed to? I'm supposed to say all this and force you to believe me? Like I can't force anybody to believe anything, and that like, and then he was asking the spirit world to know something or something. I don't remember what his words were, but we everybody in the room seen this white cloud like appear, and then it funneled into his mouth. And then the second it happened, he like hit the ground and he started screaming. He's like, ah! And because he was a liar his whole life, and the cloud went in him and it forced him to not be a liar or something. And he was like, I don't know how to explain it, but later that night, I could see a crocodile come out of his chest. That's It was really weird. It's like the crocodile of Egypt, so back, but it looked more
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was
Aztec.
that's literally as you said it. Well, they have their own, right? I mean, they don't have Quetzalcoatl. That's not Aztec. I think it's Mayan.
Oh yeah.
But the Aztecs were kind of crazy though. Like they
Well, you're
were
familiar with
obviously
the Book of the Dead,
with the Tibetan one.
the Egyptian one. It's really just a
Like
scroll
yeah, I'm
with a
just like
picture.
very passive, like yeah, very passingly familiar. You
Well,
know, I'm an Asianist. I kind of like I just like my stuff. I don't really think
yeah.
about the other stuff. But yeah, it's
Well,
cool to talk
I'm sure
about.
there's similar stuff in the. But basically, it's like a depiction of like this play happening where in dynastic Egypt in more modern times, they all think it's people dressing up, but it was people that were the people would wear a symbol on their head, and that the symbol was the symbol of antiquity, and that the excuse me. But I believe what was happening during that lunar eclipse was that he was being judged, and that I seen one of the chief proprietors that was, because in the Egyptian lore, the initiate is tells Sobek the crocodile the secret word, and that then the spirit world is then opened, and that the it sounds kind of ridiculous, but like I do believe that these initiates, when they were being initiated into the pyramids on the psychedelics, that they were seeing these actual entities, regardless of the culture, because the entities themselves I would consider to be possible shapeshifters, basically, and that they'll take the form of the entity that is the depiction of the culture. So, depending on the culture's depiction, the entity will then assume the form of said character to do some kind of spirit thing on the initiate, which is, it's very bizarre because the cougar chick I used to date claimed that she would always pay all this money to go to these ceremonies in the pyramids at night and stuff, and like she was part of some like aristocracy, or I don't know what the hell. She was rich. She used to be married to some Arab that was super rich, and like but but anyways, so quit trying to duck the lot. So this this chick claimed that, I believe it was the Temple of Dendera, that uh she claimed that an alien gray did like a spirit surgery on her and removed her heart or something, and but I believe it was just the entity simply reading her mind and seeing what she believed in and then presenting themselves as the thing the initiate believed in. But it was very bizarre because it was like 14 years ago, and I gave this chick mushrooms, and she never had mushrooms before, and like we were like, she was trying to say that going into the temples and doing the initiations had the same feeling, and I'm like, what, whatever, that's not true. That can't be true. And like, it was a really weird trip. Like, I don't know if I read the chick's mind or something or what, but like, it was a really weird trip because nothing actually happened. In that I was like making tea or something, and I kept closing my eyes and looking up, and I could see like the ceiling of a cathedral, and I wasn't sure if, and it was really weird because I kept testing it, like, it was definitely a cathedral ceiling, and it was. I think that perhaps because the chick had went to so many cathedrals in Europe that I was like reading her memories or something, or I don't know. I can't explain it. Basically, it's like a weird anomaly where like one of my friends claims that this is like 2008 that I took a DMT trip, and then he asked me what I seen, and I told him that I seen a man wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and that he told him to tell him something or something. And then my friend that I didn't know, but the person asking me the question was their uncle had just died, and that's what their uncle wore. And it was very weird. It was like I seen his uncle's ghost or something on the DMT trip. Uh,
So yeah, so you tapped in, and just like that's the whole point of psychedelics. There's so we can tap in, but then we have to kind of like let it go a little bit and be like, okay, we have to be able to do it on our own. That's the whole thing. They're great as a gateway, but they're not the key itself, and that's what people tend to forget is that we do have the key, and actually the most powerful key is us. It just can be really hard to activate. But Clint, we've been on for 3 hours, buddy. So I think I'm gonna drop out. I don't know if you're gonna keep
yeah,
going. Like,
I gotta take a leak.
okay, so that sounds perfect. So thank you
Yeah, if
so
you
much
wanna
for letting
do
me.
a shout out to your podcast.
Well,
Uh,
I'm on Threshold Saints. If anyone
yeah,
cares
Thresh.
about it, but yeah, or follow me on Twitter. Wukong Reborn. Clint and I are friends on our mutuals on Twitter, so you can always
Yeah,
see me. We interact quite a lot, and yeah. So thanks, Clint. I really had fun and awesome talk, and I learned a lot.
yeah,
So I'll shout you out on a Rejects when I go on Thursday.
yeah. Well, it's funny because we didn't actually get into the Illuminati very much like we were supposed to.
It's fine because you actually I'd like these broader conversations because I think that it shows that you can make connections to things that are not necessarily looks like they're related. There's kind of an internal
Yeah.
logic that connects them. So I think yeah, I think I like that people
Well,
like it too.
I did want to bring up how the Nazis, they were an arm of the Illuminists, and
Oh,
they
100%.
re-emerged the Olympics back to the scene,
Yeah.
and like the basically
Oh,
the goal of the Illuminists is to make everybody believe in that one world religion, and also simultaneously destroy all other religions,
yeah.
and then
Very
uh,
globalist
take
because
away. Well, they also want to take away private property, which is one of the planks of the Communist Manifesto, and well, also the destroying of religions is part of the Communist Manifesto. But then there's the other plank of the state owning the children, and then there's a couple more planks I'm missing. Me and Robbie Marks and Lee, the British guy, we did an episode on my other YouTube where we went over how every plank of the Communist Manifesto is already happening in America, and that if you notice the Antifa or whatever that group, their
mhm.
symbol has a red flag right on it.
No, red and black. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
doing. They're like this Gabura and Binah. It's the foot soldiers of time, and like, but they're warriors. They're like the front liners, right? So it's exactly what Antifa is. It's like and they're evil too because they don't care about anything. They're very nihilistic. They're kind of just a destructive force that is kind of that energy, fire without any feeling, fire without will, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, it's very destructive, and they're bad guys, and people who would align with them, that's deep state shit, like for real. So
yeah,
think about that before
the,
you like say like BLM shit or whatever, like because that's all one thing. It's
yeah.
all one thing.
They're all initiates without portfolio.
Exactly.
Initiates.
Good way to say it, Clint.
Yeah, but
Okay,
yeah, we'll
well,
talk to you later. Maybe we'll do
okay,
another stream tomorrow or something.
awesome, sounds good. Okay, talk to
All
you
right,
soon. Bye.
peace. All right, hasta luego.